Okay, Chair, we're now streaming live on YouTube. I'll hand the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to East Devon District Council's Cabinet, the 4th of May 2022. I'll be chairing the meeting, Paul Arnott, and I'd like to welcome anyone also watching via live streaming. Based on a decision of Council, continue virtual meetings until the 31st of October 2022. Can I remind members and the public that this Council has delegated much of its decision-taking power to our senior officers? Can I also remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout, and we reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Can you please turn your telephone devices off or to silent? And I always do that myself at this point, I've forgotten. In the event of a break in the internet connection, please bear with us. We'll try to reconnect, and if after 15 minutes we can't, we'll have to adjourn and reconvene at a later date. If you'd like to comment, members, please raise your yellow hand and wait to be called. Any members of the public who'd like to see the agenda, it's at eastdevon.gov.uk, and we'll now start the meeting with a roll call of committee members by our DSO, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with yourself, Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Councillor Haywood.
Present. Thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Armstrong.
She has offered apologies, Amanda.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hookway.
Present. Thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Young.
Present. Thank you.
Councillor Ledger.
Present. Thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Loudon.
I'm present, Amanda. Thanks.
Councillor Rickson.
Present. Thank you.
And Councillor Rowland.
Present. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you all. I can confirm your quorum, Chair.
Thank you, Amanda. For the second agenda item, or the first agenda item 1, public speaking, I'm going to pass over here to the Deputy Chair of Cabinet, Councillor Paul Haywood. Paul, please.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 1, public speaking. Lovely to see public speakers with us this evening. Can I invite first and foremost, firstly, Lisa McLean. McLean, my apologies, Lisa.
No, it's McLean. Hello,
McLean,
thank you.
To speak on item 18, car parking issues.
Yes, thanks. I'm Liza McLean. My husband and I own and run a pet shop on Temple Street on one of the main roads which goes into Sidmouth Town Centre. Along with several other small businesses, our customers use the limited time free spaces in the Temple Street car park. I understand from the agenda that you'll be looking into a report to be carried out concerning the free car parks for autumn, and I wanted to take the opportunity to stress the impact of taking away limited free parking on local businesses and to ask if this is going to be looked into in that report. Businesses like ours don't benefit from being in a town centre position where people can expect to pay a reasonable amount for parking, and that payment is necessary in order to keep a turnover of spaces. People use our free car park to pop in for quick stops to single businesses or to drop a child at school, etc. And they're just not prepared to pay for these types of errands. And they'll instead just look for other alternatives like shopping online or using the residential roads. I was also interested to find out if actual examples will be looked into in this report, such as the Sid Ford car park, which changed from free to pay and display years ago, but recently, resulting in shops shutting there with a very limited income to the council. Thank you very much for your time in hearing our concerns and our questions this evening.
Our pleasure. Thank you very much. I'm sure if you are able to, you could send any sort of inquiries or any empirical evidence that you have or wish to submit to Cabinet members, and we'd be delighted to take it on board in our considerations, as would officers.
Lovely. Do I send that through to the email that I've got for the public speaking and that can be distributed, or was that the right thing to do?
I think that if officers are happy, if we do that, and then they can circulate it straight to us, indeed.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. Next, may I call Mr. Goodman? We have you down as speaking on item 17, the UK Prosperity Fund prospectus, Mr. Goodman.
Yeah, and car parks.
And car parks.
Councillor Hayward, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. The Conservative government have allocated 2.6 billion to the Shared Prosperity Fund, and East Devon will receive 1.796 million. This is the highest amount for any district council in Devon, and a great opportunity to secure substantial funding over the next 3 years, helping businesses, particularly retail, improving skills, climate change, and the important area of poverty are just a few areas identified for possible funding. The local partnership group is important, and would Cabinet consider adding Southwest Enterprise Partnership, Devon Wildlife Trust, and the Chamber of Commerce to this list? All three meet the criteria and would add real value. Could task groups be considered to discuss specific local initiatives so you can hear from them their views across East Devon? And I particularly would suggest that town and parish councils would be well placed to lead on this. Turning to agenda item, would the Cabinet consider now having a task and finish group to look at the wider future strategy of car parks? Cabinet will be aware that the petitions by the Chamber of Commerce and myself attracted nearly 2,000 signatures challenging the car parking charges. It was disappointing that East Devon would not allow the views of residents to be heard, and a new strategy review would allow for this. One area I've been challenging for some time is the lack of documentation on equalities, and I was informed that no documentation can be found on the equalities element of the car parking charges. Andrew Dennis said on the Poverty Working Panel on the 15th of February 2021, we are aware of car parking tariffs on people's well-being. Cars are perhaps not so much a luxury in a rural area where there are not better transport options available at the moment, so we are conscious that we keep tariffs as low as we can. This is surely evidence that a full equality assessment should have been completed. East Devon Equality Policy Plan says that equality impact assessment forms for key services changes and policy changes should be completed. Car parking was a key change and the well-being of residents was identified as a concern. Will Cabinet explain why this was not completed and why since 2021 I can find no record of any impact assessment forms ever being completed? This is even where the impact is rated high. All Cabinet see is a few lines with no analysis at all. Under the Equalities Act of 2010, there's a legal requirement to carry out such assessments. In light of this, will Cabinet ask for an independent review of their policy and how it is being delivered so the Council can ensure that they are considering all the views of East Devon? Thank you, Chair. Councillor Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
Thank you.
Would it be possible, there's an awful lot within what you've said this evening, I'm very grateful for it. I can see officers scribbling down notes furiously. Would you be able to forward that question if you haven't already done so to our team? And
Councillor Hayward, I would do at the end of the meeting, of course.
Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Goodman. That's very, very kind of you. And may I call our final speaker, Robert Cathro. Mr. Cathro, I hope that's the pronunciation of your name.
Absolutely. Yep, thank you. Correct. And good evening, councillors, and thanks for the opportunity to
car
speak.
Car parking issues too, I believe.
Absolutely, yeah. I've just got that one agenda item, car parking issues, which was right at the end, and I appreciate you're all very busy with complex and challenging issues, so I'll be brief. As some of the attendees at the meeting know, this is a complex issue. I'm talking mostly about motorhomes and overnight camping in Exmouth. I see there's some policies coming forward today for consideration. But what I'd like to ask is that the 21 questions posed in the notes sent by Mark Taylor to Mr. Williams and Mr. Ennis, amongst others, on the 26th of April, is carefully considered and responded to before any new policies are adopted. And I'll give you one example. We have a problem with fire regulations at a particular car park in Exmouth called the Echelon, where vehicles park much too close together at night. Even if the council approves employing one or two new officers, I wouldn't like to be the one that has to enforce that policy at 10 o'clock at night. So I think my point is the policy needs revision and review, and enforcement needs looking at. Other councils, a lot's moved on since last March. South Hams have taken a different approach. And one last point, there is a meeting scheduled for the 19th of May between Devon County Council and East Devon County Council, at which hopefully there'll be an opportunity to revisit this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cathro. And again, I'm sure our CEO and officers have made notes of what you've asked. And as you say, it is a rapidly moving process, very complex. But thank you very much for your contribution.
Just let's not make any lock in any more potential errors. The pilot hasn't gone that well. Let's do it properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cathro. And I believe that's the end of public speaking. So I'll pass back to the chair, Rana.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward, for conveying us through that. And now, apologies, please. No, not at all. Let's not apologise to anybody. Let's do the minutes of the previous meeting. So if anyone has a comment on the set of minutes from the 30th of March 2022, please can you do this by raising your yellow hand? If I see no hands, I'll take this as an indication that you are content and that the meeting minutes are agreed. I see no yellow hands, so thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting are recommended to be agreed. Now, apologies, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Is that Debbie or Amanda? Oh, Amanda.
It's Amanda. I have two cabinet apologies. That's Councillor Sarah Jackson and Councillor Megan Armstrong, and apologies from Councillor Jeff Pook.
Thank you very much. Amanda, agenda item 4, declarations of interest to be done by Amanda via roll call.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with yourself, Councillor Arnott.
Yes, thank you. Agenda item 16, the Axe Valley project and levelling up fund. I live in the Axe Valley. I'm a parish councillor for Collerton as well. Thank you. That's a personal interest.
Thank you. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Amanda. Agenda item 14, relating to Cranbrook. I have a personal interest as my children live at Cranbrook. Agenda item 16, similarly to Councillor Arnott, the Axe Valley levelling up bid. I have a personal interest in that. I'm clerk to All Saints Parish Council, Chardstock Parish Council and Axminster Town Council, but it's only a personal interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hookway.
None, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Young.
None, thank you.
Councillor Ledger.
Agenda item 15 and 16. So I'm a resident of Seaton and a member of Seaton Town Council.
Thank you. Councillor Loudon.
None, Amanda, thank you.
Councillor Rickson.
None, thank you.
And Councillor Rowland.
Thanks, Amanda. I have two personal interests. One is in the agenda item 15, the seat in Moradunham, and item 16, the Axe Valley levelling up bid as a ward member for Seaton.
Amanda, my apologies. May I just add a further one? Simply, I think it's because it's appropriate and in the interest of probity. Agenda item 15, the Seaton Moradunham issue. A personal interest. I have been, I think the word probably is fair to say, lobbied very rigorously by representatives and residents of Seaton on both sides. So I think, and I come into this with an open mind, but I think that needs to be minuted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If I could go back to Councillor Rowland, please. Councillor Rowland, 15 and 16, the agenda items, is your declaration the same for both items? I'm sorry.
Personal interest, yeah. And
yeah,
I should also declare that I've been lobbied on item 15, Seaton Moradunham. But I have no preconceived ideas about the outcome.
Okay, and can you repeat your declaration, please, Councillor Rowland?
Yeah, it's agenda item 15, Seaton Moradunham, and agenda item 16, the Axe Valley levelling up bid.
and it was because
Personal interest as a Seaton ward member.
Seaton ward member. Sorry, that's the bit I missed. Thank you.
So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Back to yourself.
You're muted, Chair.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair, for that handy hint. This will become relevant in a moment that I'm not very good at technology. Agenda item 5, we didn't have any late items or matters of urgency. We do now have a late item, which I'm going to bring forward. Members of the council and the public will be aware of the formal resignation today of the Member of Parliament for much of the East Devon district, Mr. Neil Parish. This was an unhappy matter, and I will not add to the reams of commentary. For historical purposes, I recommend Martin Oates's full interview with Mr. Parish, transmitted on BBC Politics Southwest last Sunday, still available on iPlayer. Long after all the tractor jokes have gone, this will remain as the tragic record of a broken man. It is not possible to condone what he did in the Chamber of House of Commons, but in his overnight decision to resign by Saturday morning, and that astonishingly frank interview he gave, Mr. Parish leaves a long political career, having at least abided by the best codes regarding resignation, so blithely ignored by his superiors. However, my purpose in raising this tonight is that, of course, it has some immediate side effects on the work of this district council. Some months ago, a meeting was fixed for last Friday morning at 10 o'clock between me as leader at East Devon, Mark as our CEO, Neil Parish and Simon Jupp. Mark had produced a first-rate agenda on matters of concern for the people of East Devon, and all seemed set fair. It was disappointing that Simon Jupp gave a late apology and didn't show up. I'm not certain why. Neil, however, was there on Zoom, and we had a productive hour with a set of identified outcomes. And this is what he agreed he would help us with. There are 5 points. First, he was going to endorse our bid to the government under the Levelling Up Fund for major works on Seaton Seafront, industrial units in Seaton, and regeneration projects in Axminster. Second, he said he would personally fight on for the missing £1.6 million his and Mr. Jupp's government promised they would help the council with 2 years ago if we kept LED running through the pandemic. Third, he was looking forward to working with us on the phosphate pollution into the River Axe, which has led Natural England to say no more homes in Axminster can be built until that is mitigated. As a farmer, with all the problems of leaking slurry lagoons and fertiliser runoffs from fields, he would have been a considerable expert figure in all of this. Fifth, we appealed with him to have a word with government about the huge strain put on our district council resources when we suddenly asked to distribute energy rebate payments via the means of the council tax system. And finally, we asked yet again for his help with a change to housing policy, especially what happens if we graft to create new social housing only for it to be privately purchased within a few years. Mr. Parish pledged to help us with all of the above, and I was grateful to him for the meeting, which was professional and civil. I have absolutely no doubt that he had no idea what was to befall him just a few hours later. Thereafter, as you may imagine, members, I had an extremely busy weekend receiving calls from all and sundry. In particular, and although, as you will see, I'm not a technophile, I have not the slightest interest in Twitter, I was advised by a number of sources that the Conservatives in this area had deleted content on their Twitter feeds, about which, frankly, I don't care less. One correspondent, however, sent me an extraordinary photograph which had survived this cull. It was from October or November 2019, and it was the selection meeting for the Conservative candidate for the December 2019 election, and the photograph is there published on the East Devon Conservative site. What that photograph revealed was that that meeting, that selection meeting, was moderated by Alison Hernandez, the Devon and Cornwall Police and Crime Commissioner. And there in the image of a number of people holding Conservative placards in pride of place is John Humphreys. Now, members will remember the awful account read by Councillor Eileen Wragg on behalf of one of Humphreys' victims. It is nearly 10 months since Humphreys' conviction and 5 months since that statement was read. And yet nothing has been heard. So I would like to seek tonight, please, very quick yes or no clarification from the chair of the Conservative Party in East Devon, Councillor Desarum. Bruce, is it true that this selection meeting took place at Exeter Community College? And is it the case, as has been reported to me yet again this weekend, that Simon Jupp was staying with Humphreys before and during the election, and that his East Devon address was Humphreys' address? Bruce, I hope you're happy to answer those two questions.
Thank you, Chair. As the Deputy Leader of our Conservative group, as Councillor Brown is unable to be with us tonight, should you have raised this topic, which you have done, he asked me to read out the following statement, which reads as follows. Neil Parish became MP for Tiverton-Honiton in 2010 with a majority of 9,000. In the following 12 years, he was our MP. He increased that to over 24,000, proving what a good constituency MP he was, working tirelessly for the people in Tiverton-Honiton. We support Neil's decision to apologise in the circumstances and resign as the Member of Parliament. So that is all that I was asked to read out this evening. And apart from that, I have no further comments to make. And I do wish you well for the remainder of the meeting. Thank you ever so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Desarum, and I can understand why those two questions may not be ones you wish to answer tonight, although I think they should have been answered before. So I've asked them here in the public domain, and I hope that people will feel it appropriate to follow those up. In essence, it looks as if for the purposes of a selection meeting, a man who'd been arrested at least 18 months before, was charged and was on bail, was taken into an educational facility for a meeting chaired by the Police and Crime Commissioner, at which the new MP candidate was selected, who quite probably went back home that night to stay at John Humphreys' house. That needs addressing. Thank you very much. Agenda item 6, confidential or exempt items, and there are no confidential or exempt items which officers have recommended should be dealt with in this way. Agenda item 7, the forward plan.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. I've had my hand up for a short while.
Sorry, Councillor Loudon. I didn't see hands up. Yeah, Councillor Loudon, please. Thank you.
Just to draw your attention to the fact that we have public speakers still remaining in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. I'm very happy for the public speakers. I suppose technically public speakers should be viewing on Facebook by now or YouTube. So. But on this occasion, if they want to stay, Henry, can I ask what's appropriate? If public, because the public speakers have got an interest in a couple of the items coming up later. So is it okay for them to stay in the Zoom environment?
Well, I mean, our practice has been that they are asked to leave and then watch it online, but I don't see a particular problem with it if you're happy, Chair.
Well,
okay.
Chair, if I may, it means then it restricts our use of the chat function.
Okay, in which case, can I ask from memory, it's Robert and Lisa and Mike. Would you be kind enough to, your items don't come up for a while actually, so you've got a good 5 minutes or so. If you can get back in on YouTube or Facebook, that seems the best thing to do. So DSOs, if you can put that into operation. Thank you very much. Yes, Councillor Maddie Chapman. Sorry, Maddie, I've just seen your yellow hand there. So yes, over to you.
Yes, I would like to clarify some of your comments, and hopefully I can answer some of them for you.
Yeah.
Simon Jupp did not stay with John Humphreys. I can categorically conclude on that because John Humphreys did own a flat in town which was let out for a number of years to different people. It was empty at the time, and Simon went into it for 2 or 3 weeks while he was waiting for his house. So he did not stay with John Humphreys. As a member of the Conservative Party for a number of years, although I was on the council with John and on East Devon, I was not aware of any of the crimes committed. I was not even aware that he'd been taken in for under caution to the police. I was not aware that he had been charged and put on bail. I wasn't aware of any of that. I don't even know if that is true. We heard afterwards, it was absolutely horrendous. And if anyone I have heard, some of the councillors saying, oh, well, you must have known. Well, we didn't know, because I categorically, when I was mayor, if I'd heard it, I would have said something about it. You know, I'm not backwards in coming forwards, and I would have been absolutely appalled. So I want to clear up that no point did Simon Jupp stay with John Humphreys. He rented a flat, which I understand John Humphreys' partner let it to him for a couple of weeks while he was waiting for his house in Sidmouth to go through, because he wanted to live in the constituency. So I wouldn't like any aspersions to fall on Simon. I think he's a very good MP. He works for East Devon really, really well and tries really, really hard and supports the local residents. So I was not aware of anything on John Humphreys. None of my colleagues were aware. And anyone that says that they heard rumours, they should have told us. And that is what I have to say on it, if that's all right, Leader.
No, it absolutely is, Councillor Chapman. And I have absolutely no reason to disbelieve that you believe all of that to be the case. If I may make one comment en passant, it is this. If I had been the person who, as it turns out, was the tenant of John Humphreys, who had just been elected to Parliament, on hearing that he had been convicted and sent to jail for 21 years, I think what I would have done is issued a press statement about that. Councillor Eileen Wragg, please.
Thank you, Chair. I find these denials extraordinary. I'm not doubting that maybe Maddie didn't know, but I certainly knew that John Humphreys was under investigation, and this would have been at least 4 years ago. I find it extraordinary that none of the Conservative members are admitting that they knew. If we knew, the opposition, then I find it just incredible that they didn't know and they're denying all knowledge of it. And I believe that there may be further evidence in the future coming forward, which will prove that what I'm saying is correct. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wragg. And finally, Councillor Jess Bailey, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that one thing that's never come forward is any kind of formal response from the Conservative Party. And just in the same way that the council is going to be doing an independent investigation, I don't understand why the Conservative Party haven't actually produced a report on what has happened. And I don't doubt what Councillor Chapman says, but at the same time, the Conservative Party must have practices and procedures around candidates, particularly when they come forward for election, that make declarations. So were those declarations not made, or were the declarations made but not true? We just don't know. We've had no information from the party in the past 8+ months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. And that relates to obviously Councillor. In a moment, Councillor Chapman, please, I'm just finishing a sentence here, if it's okay. So obviously, Councillor Bailey is referring to John Humphreys. I did, and I copied it all to every member of this council, and indeed to the Cabinet Office and to all of our MPs, Mr. Stride, Mr. Jupp, and Mr. Parish. I did ask precisely that question: has there been an internal inquiry from the local Conservative Party, and would they be kind enough to share it with us? You know, I thought that would be the right thing to do. And I got what can only describe as the usual answer from Councillor Twist. Councillor Chapman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, after John Humphrey stood down, he told us he was standing down for personal reasons. He didn't tell us why. We weren't told. And I'm sure, I don't understand if the opposition knew. Eileen and I have always got on and worked well together. Why she didn't say something to me? No one said anything to me. And as far as my colleagues are concerned, no one said anything to any of us. We have asked other colleagues and no one knew what was going on. And even his partner was not aware. And they got married. And if his partner wasn't aware and was absolutely devastated, and the poor man is looking after his mother that is really, really ill at the moment, though I've got the greatest sympathy for the victims in this, it's a horrible thing to happen with them and it stays with you for life. But I think to keep on about it, we've asked, and I cannot find anyone in the Conservative Party that knew anything about it. And everyone is absolutely shocked and horrified. And what else can I say? We just didn't know. No one said anything. Why, if the opposition knew something, maybe they heard from the victim and they were told. But no one whispered a word to us, which I find very, very disappointing, which is why all the Conservative group are now enforced to have CBS checks. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. I think it's a DBS check there.
Could I come back?
Okay.
I've been named.
30 seconds, Councillor Wragg, please.
Thank you. Well, one thing I took from my higher education was that you have to be able to qualify everything that you say. You have to evidence it. I had no evidence, but I did have the word of mouth, and I still find it extraordinary. And I didn't say anything to anyone. And it was only after it came out, I thought, my God, it was true then. So, no, I didn't say anything to anyone about it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wragg. Something I've always found very useful is the idea of Freudian projection, where there is an attempt from the guilty party to project on people who've done nothing but good in regard to this. We must at all times think first and only of the victims. Right, moving on now, please, to the, I think I've already said this, agenda item 6, confidential exempt items, there are none. And we go to agenda item 7 now, the forward plan. Members of Cabinet, are you happy to recommend the forward plan for approval? I'll take it as a yes. I don't think we need to vote on that, Henry, do we? As long as it's nobody's. Okay, all quiet on that. Thank you very much. So the forward plan is approved. We now go to agenda item 8, the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee held on the 17th of March and the 7th of April 2022. Can I ask, do members wish to make any particular recommendations on this item, or can we agree to move this forward without specific recommendations? That's the 17th of March and the 7th of April 2022.
There is a specific recommendation from the 7th of April in relation to the forward plan, and it says that the earliest opportunity Cabinet sets up a high-level meeting with all relevant organisations and agencies to discuss serious concerns relating to pollution and the lack of enforcement capability. So there is a specific recommendation, minute 64.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anybody like to speak to that recommendation, please? Just looking for hands there. Okay, if not,
sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Nick.
I'm being a bit slow. Yes, I'd like to say that this was a very important meeting. There is considerable concern by residents, particularly in Littleham Ward, by the pollution that appears to be happening in the River Exe, which is a Ramsar site. I don't believe for a moment that pollution should be happening. There is also great concern about the lack of who is ultimately responsible, and therefore we need to have a look at exactly who we need to contact and discuss how we can enforce the fact that sewage is no longer discharged into the district's rivers. So I'm happy to put that one forward, propose that one, if you like, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Hookway. I'll look for a seconder on that. I still got a hand up from Councillor Chapman, but I think that's probably an old hand, is it?
No, Leader.
Oh, okay. Please come in. Yeah, thank you.
I'm a member of scrutiny. We have a number of issues with sewerage in the Mare Valley, coming from the sewerage plant. We had South West Water around, and we've asked for them to come back. But I do feel that it should be put forward to a cabinet or full council. We need to hold South West Water accountable, bearing in mind the big profits they have. I know Simon Jupp is chasing them around as well. We do have a very big problem in Exmouth with flooding. And when we got a lot of water, it overflows the sewerage tank down in town. So when we had flooding in town, we had sewerage going along by the parade, and it's totally unacceptable to residents. And so we feel that we need to hold South West Water accountable. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. And can I come now, please, to Councillor Rickson?
Well, Councillor Hookway recommended approval. I would like to second that. And I would like to also say that it is not just the Axe or the Exe which are a problem. All rivers are being affected, and it's high time that South West Water were held to account.
Thank you, Councillor Rickson. Councillor Young, please.
Just to add to that, Chair, remember that 70% of the pollution in the rivers is from agricultural runoff. It's 30% sewage and 70% agricultural. And it's the EA that are responsible for the checking of the silage holds and how the farms are run. And it's imperative that we check with the Environment Agency that they are doing their correct checks on these farms. As I understand it, on some rivers, they haven't done any checks for the last 2 years. And it's a great concern that this agricultural runoff is continuing. Thank you.
Councillor Young. Henry, do I need to take a vote on this at all, or just note the? I do. Okay.
Yeah, we just have one, please.
Thank you very much. I'll go through that, Amanda, just for sake. So, members, can you just do the green tick, red cross, etc., on this one? How's that looking, Amanda?
That's in favour, Chair. Unanimous.
Thank you very much indeed. We now go to the minutes of the Poverty Working Panel held on the 21st of March 2022. And there's a series of recommendations that can be found on page 25 of your agenda pack, which I am zooming down to as fast as I can. Can I ask, please, if anybody from outside of the Cabinet would like to make a comment on those or make any form of contribution? Nobody at this stage, and so Cabinet, please. Would anybody like to? We're missing Megan, unfortunately, tonight, who I'm sure would have said something very helpful on this. Anybody else like to come in on that?
If I may, Chair, it's really might be leaping ahead slightly, but it's just to endorse and propose the recommendations made, which are all very sound and will go a long way towards trying to alleviate and mitigate against poverty in East Devon. Which unfortunately is on the rise, and all of us can play a part in preventing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. Before I come to Councillor Rickson, I think it's helpful just to read out what those recommendations are. And they came under item 31 of the Poverty Working Panel of the 21st of March, the energy briefing update. And they were that we should lobby government for more support with energy costs, including for a price cap on heating oil and LPG, so that they are provided the same level of protections that consumers have with electricity and gas. that we should lobby government on further emergency funding to continue to help people to eat now that the Housing Support Fund is finishing. Third, that we lobby government to impose a 300% council tax charge for second homeowners. And fourthly, to lobby government for a register of private sector landlords. I look forward to the government putting a 300% council tax charge on second homes, which really does queue up Councillor Marianne Wixon.
Well, if they can do it in Wales, I'm sure that we can follow a good example, can't we? Anyway, having attended this meeting, I would like to fully endorse these recommendations and recommend approval.
Thank you very much. So we've got a proposer from Councillor Hayward, seconder from Councillor Ritson. Can we go to a vote, please? Now, green ticks, red crosses, etc.
That's unanimous in favour, Chair.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you, Cabinet. We now go to agenda item 10, the minutes of the Housing Review Board held on the 24th of March and on the 7th of April 2022. I'm not aware of any recommendations.
Yeah.
Henry?
Sorry. Yeah, so the 7th of April, there are 3, minute 54, minute 55, minute 58. Whilst you perhaps look through them in the papers, I can read them out for you, Chair, if that would help.
Thank you. And if you've got a page reference while you're reading it.
I don't actually.
No, just read them out. That's okay.
Yeah. So minute 54 relates to the Housing Revenue Account and Housing Capital Finance Report, and the recommendation is that Cabinet recommend the Housing Revenue Account and Housing Capital Finance Report for approval. The second, minute 55, is Housemark membership renewal, and it's recommended that Cabinet recommend that membership to Housemark be renewed at this year's annual cost of £7,830 plus VAT. And finally, minute 58, electrical safety policy. It's recommended that Cabinet recommend to Council that the electrical safety policy for housing be adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. I've just caught up with that. Thank you very much. Would anybody from outside Cabinet like to speak on that, please? Okay, Cabinet members. Oh, sorry, Councillor Steve Gazzard, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just really wanted to say I did attend the meeting. 3 really good recommendations, Chair, and I hope Cabinet will endorse them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzard. Cabinet, please. Any further comments on that? No? Okay. Councillor York.
So yeah, I'd like to endorse all 3 following Councillor Steve Gazzard's comments.
Lovely, thank you. Anybody like to second that? Yeah, Councillor Loudon, thank you very much. Amanda, let's go to a vote on that. Green ticks, red crosses, etc., please.
Again, that's unanimous in favour, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 11, the minutes of the LED Monitoring Forum held on the 12th of April 2022. If you go to page 48 of your agenda, you'll see there are some recommendations there, which I shall tell you in just a second. And those recommendations are that we should wait for this is the minute 124 relating to the Colleton Leisure Centre and all-weather pitch. The recommendations to Cabinet and Council are that we wait for the leisure strategy before the proposals for Colleton Leisure Centre and all-weather pitch are considered again at the LED Monitoring Forum. And the second recommendation is that we ask Colleton Grammar School whether, during the break time, pupils could be using more appropriate footwear for the all-weather pitch to help prolong its life. I have to confess, that was my idea, and I've been waking up at night screaming about that one ever since. But my kids used to go there, and they did used to, I'm sure they'll play in trainers. Anyway, there we go. So now, any comments on that, please, from anybody from outside of Cabinet, or if not, nothing there. Councillor John Loudon, please.
Chair, forgive me, I don't know if I'm straying off the subject, but on the issue of LED, I cannot help but hear on the news constantly concerns expressed nationally about the impact upon, particularly on swimming pools, of the cost of energy going up. And I just wondered whether or not I assume we are in conversation with LED about what their likely future thoughts are on the impact that will have on their service delivery.
Thanks, Councillor Loudon. If I can maybe come to Councillor Hookway, just for a few. I know that's been coming up at recent LED meetings, hasn't it, Nick, about fuel costs? Yeah.
Yes. That was discussed. I think it was at the last cabinet meeting we did that. There was a recommendation. I think it was a recommendation that I and a couple of other members would approve an additional grant of £100,000 to cover any additional costs. But I'm sure that went through at the last cabinet meeting. But I'll check that in a minute if you like. But that is something that has been monitored by the LED Monitoring Forum. Yes, it has been discussed. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. Thank you very much. Okay, then can we please go to a vote on that? Green ticks, red crosses, etc. for those two recommendations.
That's unanimous and in agreement, Chair.
Right, thank you so much. Thank you, Cabinet. That was quite a busy 45 minutes. So I'm now getting the popcorn out and a bottle of Diet Coke, and I'm looking forward to agenda item 12. Libby Jarrett to talk about the Council Tax Energy Rebate Discretionary Fund. Libby is our service lead for revenues, corporate customer services, fraud and compliance. Over to you, please, Libby.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. So this report relates to the government's £150 energy rebate scheme called the Council Tax Rebate. As the report highlights, there's two parts to the scheme. There's the mandatory scheme, where the criteria is set out by government and is fully funded. It supports households in council tax bands A to D, plus those in band E in receipt of the disabled band reduction. The criteria is set out under paragraph 1.3 of the report. Second part, which is the primary focus of this report, is the discretionary element of the council tax rebate scheme, where we have received £269,850 in funding, where we must determine a local policy for how best to utilise that funding. As the report sets out under paragraph 2.1, support can be targeted to those households in band E to H that aren't eligible under the main scheme, or to provide carefully targeted top-up payments to the most vulnerable households in bands A to D. So before moving on and going into how we've developed the proposed discretionary scheme, I just want to give you the latest update on where we are with the rollout of the mandatory scheme. So far we've paid out to 34,432 households, and that's worth 5.1 million, and equates to 75% of eligible households. This relates to households where we've got direct debit details for them, and so we've been able to put that money into their bank account using those council tax details, and we've had to verify those accounts before issuing the payments. Those who aren't on direct debit, or where we haven't been able to verify, we will are in the process of having be ready to launch an online claim form, and that's due to be live next week. And we will have approximately 12,000 households that will need to come through that claim process in order to obtain their payment. Letters, the first batch of letters are going out this Friday. And obviously we recognise that not all of our residents will be able to do it online. So we are setting up a telephone service for those vulnerable households who can't, as well as providing appointments for face-to-face appointments. Obviously, we are dealing with high volumes, and so it is a significant amount of work that we've got to do to get that up and running. But I think what is worth highlighting with obviously it's been in the local press quite a lot, or the national press. There's a number of authorities that aren't yet live. And so the fact that we've got 75% out hopefully reassures members that we are working at pace, and we are committed to getting this funding out to eligible households quickly. So turning to our discretionary scheme, the principles of our discretionary scheme are in two parts as set out under section 2.31 of the report and 2.32. So the first part of the discretionary scheme is to provide targeted support, which is very much directed at those households that are going to be disproportionately impacted with the rising costs of energy bills. So that's those on low incomes, where there's a disabled resident, and where there's households with carers. So properties in band E to H, those that are on means tested council tax reduction, we're proposing that they receive the targeted support of £150, and there's tables within the report that set out different targeted groups that we're looking at support. The second part is to provide a sort of a special case pot to support those that aren't in those targeted groups. So other vulnerable households, so still linked to income, that aren't able to, that we're not supporting through the targeted support, that nevertheless are still struggling, and that they can come and apply on a case-by-case basis. So that's the main principles of the scheme. There's two levels of payments, £150, and there's £40 for sort of targeted top-up payments for those that are eligible under the main scheme, or for those households where they're in receipt of a disability or a carers, but not necessarily on a low income, but recognising that they're likely to have higher energy costs because of having potentially additional equipment to support their needs. We have undertaken equalities impact assessment, and that is available under background links within the equality assessment heading of the report. It was important to do that to ensure that our scheme that we're proposing has due regard to those that have protected characteristics, and the balance of our scheme by targeting support as well as having a fund available for other households mitigates those issues and any issues in having a scheme that isn't that is going to have a negative impact. So there's two recommendations for members. The first is to approve the discretionary policy as outlined in the report, and the second recommendation is to delegate authority to myself in consultation with the finance portfolio holder and the Section 151 officer to ensure that government funding is fully directed to support vulnerable households, because the discretionary scheme closes as at the end of November, and we want to make sure that all that money goes to our residents of East Devon. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Libby. Really great report on a critical subject. Thank you so much. Can I please come to members from outside of Cabinet first, please? Councillor Vicky Johns, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank Libby and her team for all of their work. I know that you have an awfully heavy workload as it is without this additional work on top of. I'm not aware of whether or not you've got any additional resources to assist you with this, or whether or not you and your team are having to manage it on top of everything else that you already do. So I just wanted to thank you for all of the hard work that your team is doing, and the fact that we've already made so many payments already is a credit to you and your team. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johns. Councillor Steve Gazzard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Likewise, I'd like to thank Libby and all the team, because it's really great news to hear how much money has gone out already. Just one question. Obviously, you're saying that you'll be sending out letters to other people that haven't got standing orders. Do you have it on your system? If somebody's got a disability, for sake of argument, I'll just quote myself, and there are loads of people like me that have got a visual impairment. Will you be sending out large print forms for them to fill in, or do they have to ring in or make an appointment to go and see someone to help them, please?
Libby, thank you, yes.
Yes, sorry, thank you. The actual claim process will be online, but we are offering alternatives for those that can't do it online. I will need to just check to make sure that where I know through our council tax, we automatically print or adjust our documents to reflect the different needs of our residents, whether that's large print or alternative methods. So I just need to check that has been taken into account with this scheme. So I will check that one out. But yes, if people can't do it online and they need that support, we've got the telephone and we can do appointments as well.
Thank you very much indeed, Libby. Can we come to Councillor Jack Rowland next, please?
Thank you, Chair. As I'm finance portfolio holder and in regular meetings that involve Libby, I'd really like to give my thanks to her and the team, if she can pass that on, because to implement the mandatory part of the scheme in such a timely and efficient manner for those £47,000 eligible residents, households in East Devon, is a true credit to the team. And picking up on the point that Councillor Johns made, yes, the government have supplied some additional support to help with the administration of this, but it's all well and good supplying the money, but of course that doesn't immediately translate into people with the necessary skills able to work on this particular subject. So yes, the workload has fallen on the existing team, so even more I congratulate them on what they've achieved. Turning to the discretionary scheme, and as Libby said, we've received £269,850 in funding. It's got to be used by the 30th of November. The modelling work that has been carried out is intended to use the available fund in the best way possible to assist those residents most in need. And again, I applaud the modelling work that's been done. And as I understand it, and Libby, forgive me, perhaps you'll put me right if I'm wrong on this, I think it's an exemplar in Devon in terms of the modelling that's been done. And other districts are actually looking to us for the where we've taken the lead on this. So again, congratulations on that. I hope that the significant amount of modelling work that has been carried out reassures members that the residents most in need are going to be in receipt of this additional funding. So I would like to formally move acceptance of the recommendations shown in the report on page 55. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland, very much. Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as always, my esteemed colleague has sort of said everything I was going to say, really, so I won't go through and repeat. The only thing I would say is, Libby mentioned earlier about the validation of 35,000 bank accounts. Well, that in itself is a gargantuan task. Having, doing my own, through my work, validations, one of them can take 10 minutes at the best of times to go through. So that is a phenomenal task. So thank you from me, Libby, and your team. And dare I say, from everyone in East Devon who's going to benefit from this, thank you for your diligence and hard work. Yeah, I was going to make a political point about it, but I won't. Thank you, Libby.
Well,
thank you for your team.
We've got a few moments, so nobody's in a hurry to get.
No, it's not.
Okay.
It have a profound and positive effect and the modelling, the work that goes into this cannot be understated. It's not something you rattle off in an afternoon on the back of an envelope. It takes thought and it takes huge amounts of number crunching. So thank you, Libby.
Thank you, Councillor Haywood. In which case, Libby has kindly read out the recommendations already. If we can go to a vote on those, please. Green ticks, red crosses, yellow hands to abstain.
That's unanimous in favour of the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you very much, Amanda. We then get to, and thank you, Libby, again. We go to agenda item 13 now, the response to the Lupit Neighbourhood Plan submission, and we have a report here from our Chief Executive Officer, Mark Williams. Mark, please.
I hesitate to say, is it Lupit or is it Lupit? But
I was going to ask you that. Well, anybody?
I think we'll go with Lupit. You know,
Lupit, okay.
It's as set out in the recommendation, Chair. So I've got nothing to say unless Mr. Freeman wants to add anything.
No. Okay. I see nobody leaping into it. Okay. Councillor John Loudon, then, please.
Thank you, Chair. In the absence of Councillor Jackson tonight, I was going to move this and say we either love it or we like it.
No, bring back Councillor Jackson, I say. So are you proposing that, Councillor Loudon? You're moving it, are you? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. And then coming to Councillor Paul Haywood, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's noticeable that as soon as Councillor Loudon had made that, dare I call it a joke, witticism, Libby Jarrett left. So I think that's everything you need to know. I'm happy to second, and dare I say, from someone who is from away myself, that I think you will tread carefully, Chair, if you're in Lupit. But they're a lovely bunch of people, but I don't think they've ever been called Lupit before. Thank you.
No, I apologise to the people of Lupit for my mispronunciation, because round here we talk about Hunderton, you know, and so everybody has their way of saying things, don't they? Of course it's Lupit. What was I thinking? Of course it's not Lupit. It's not spelled Lupit, is it? Sorry, Lupit. Right, so can we go to a vote on that to confirm their approval? Red crosses or green ticks, etc.
That's unanimous in favour of the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Amanda. Can I just minute there then, please? Because we ought to just warm congratulations to Lupit's work so far on this. Thank you. Right, agenda item 14, the Cranbrook Local Infrastructure Fund. We have a report presented here by Andy Wood, our Service Lead for Growth, Development and Prosperity. Over to you, please, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. So this is a follow-up report to the July 2021 meeting of the Cabinet, which focused solely on Cranbrook matters. This included agreeing the principle of establishing a £40 million local infrastructure fund for Cranbrook. And that was on the basis it was picking up from previous experience where revolving funds have played a really key role over the past 10 years in accelerating the delivery of key infrastructure, particularly the two schools in the town. And also explained that in the context of some challenging viability around the Cranbrook expansion areas, which was being explored, if you like, through the Cranbrook plan, that establishing a similar fund was going to be very necessary to support the ongoing expansion of the town up to 8,000 homes. So this paper picks up from that point. It expands on the principles in terms of how the fund can operate. It particularly puts forward an 8-stage process in paragraph 2.5, and that forms the basis for the recommendation. You can see within there, there's a key role for the Cranbrook Strategic Delivery Board through Cabinet and on to Council in terms of individual decision making. And in the appendix are some potential investments in terms of critical infrastructure that could come through that process, subject to detailed work and investment proposals being worked up. Finally, just to emphasise, Chair, this is very much the fund is designed to operate on a cost-neutral basis. Funds will be recovered through a roof tax arrangement, subject to negotiation, including appropriate security arrangements like a bond, for example, to underpin that repayment. Finally, important to say that this, what was important in the past, I think will become vital going forward as we move beyond a single consortium in Cranbrook, and this will be critical, this fund will be critical to ensure that critical infrastructure stays in step with the expanding population in the town. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Anybody else like to from outside of Cabinet, like to speak on that first, please? Delighted to see Councillor Kevin Blakey. Kevin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Very little to say because, of course, the recommendation here is simply to approve the process, which I'm sure everybody will agree is obvious and straightforward, at least in principle. If perhaps the operation itself will become long drawn out and intricate as it always does. And everybody please remember that this is not about investing for the long term. It's not about making capital investments. This is money that will come back to the council. So quite simply, I, and I'm sure I can speak for the other board members in Cranbrook, would be delighted to see the recommendation approved. Please go ahead and do just that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Blakey. I'm reminded of something now, which I was going to bring up earlier, so forgive me. It is about Cranbrook, but every time I see your face, Kevin, I think of the bins in Cranbrook and the guilt I feel that we need to make some more progress on those. So just to let you know, I've requested that Street Scene undertake a review of bin charging and collection methods. And what that would do is to look at the collection model for street litter bins and dog waste bins and the charges made to town and parish councils across the authority to bring about a more equitable scheme of charges for such services which covers the cost of delivery. And we would start that piece of work in October 2022 following the appointment of a new project officer. I know this has been of great concern, this area around Cranbrook in particular, so I hope that might be a positive step for you. You're very welcome to come back if if it isn't a positive step.
Well, hence the raised hand again. Yes, it's a positive step, but a very belated one, if you don't mind me saying so.
I don't.
This is something that is at least 12 months behind the point where it should have been. And again, just to reiterate that what the Cranbrook ward members and indeed the town council are looking for is not some kind of subsidised giveaway. What we're looking for is a scheme where everybody in the district pays the right and fair price, and that the money is simply not drawn away from Cranbrook to subsidise what is otherwise, I believe, a loss-making service. And I really think that the sooner that report gets produced, the better. And that presumably when the new officer is put to work on this, this will be #1 priority. We can expect a report by the end of the year. Would that be a fair assumption?
I wouldn't have said it, Kevin, if that wasn't a fair assumption. And I'm taking that as an enthusiastic endorsement from you. I think that's what I'm going to take away from that. Hopeful. No, but just to say, it should. I messed up. I should have brought it into the forward plan earlier. So forgive me for that. And so what I've done actually is just taking the opportunity to mention it now. So that is where it will come in future. And you're quite right. It's a wider matter than just Cranbrook. It is about covering the costs of service delivery across the whole district. It is overdue. I'm not going to accept any blame for that whatsoever. I think we brought it forward as fast as we can. So let's get these bins emptied at a reasonable price. Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, coming now, please, to Councillor Dan Ledger.
Thanks very much, Chair. I can't see why anyone would be against this. This delivers critical infrastructure ahead of time, ahead of housing delivery for the residents of Cranbrook. And I think if it was in any of our other patches, we would be jumping on it as soon as possible. So I'm more than happy to propose it. Thanks to Andy, Thea, and the rest of the team for the work they've done. And please, let's just get on with it.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Ledger. Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second. There's only one thing, I suppose that's a very slight pedantic point, and I'm sure perhaps it's just an interpretation of it. Under item, agenda item or the 2.5, stage 2, investment proposal is submitted to Cranbrook Strategic Delivery Board. Advice is captured, including input from town and county councillors. I guess, and I sort of come to Andy on this point, that the reason the district councillors aren't included in that statement is because they're all on the Cranbrook Strategic Board. Is that the case?
That's correct, through you, Chair. So yes.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Chair. Happy to second.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And so we have the recommendation there that Cabinet endorse the 8-stage process for operationalising the Cranbrook Local Infrastructure Fund as set out in paragraph 2.5. Can we do green ticks, red crosses, yellow hands, please?
That's unanimous in favour, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Amanda, and thank you very much indeed, Andy. We now move on to agenda item 15. We have a report on the Seaton Morridunham site from our project manager for place assets and commercialisation, Alison Hayward. Over to you, please, Alison. Now, do we have Alison? Or yeah, I can see her there.
I think she's muted.
Oh, okay. I can't see her on screen, unfortunately.
I'm so sorry. Apologies, Chair. Apologies to the committee.
Yeah.
To Cabinet. Okay, this report sets out the current position regarding the Morridunham site in Seaton and considerations regarding its disposal and redevelopment. So members will have seen the report and the recommendations made. And the key consideration for members, as set out in recommendation 1, is whether the council should continue to deal with Fossway Transition Limited as a special purchaser for the site, or whether the council should take the site to the market, as it would and has done with other similar sites. We're aware from FTL, Fossway Transition Limited, that they can develop their own Fossway Court scheme without the need for the council's Morridunham site. That said, the council will want to support the delivery of their developments, which is of significant importance to Seaton's seafront in its own right. Recommendation 2 sets out that the council wants to work collaboratively as neighbouring owner with FTL to support the delivery of Fossway Court. Importantly, in terms of the Morridunham site, a future marketing exercise would not preclude FTL from coming forward with proposals and an offer for the site. By marketing the site, however, it does enable the council to better influence, as landowner, both the future use of the site and the public realm space itself. I'm happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you.
You're on mute, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Alison, for that report. Looking now to outside of Cabinet, can I come first, please, to Councillor Marcus Hart? Marcus, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I very much welcome this report and thank Alison Hayward for putting it together and finally bringing this decision to a head, really, because we've been dealing with the Morridunham in Seaton for quite some time. It's a blot on the landscape on the seafront. There's lots of development going on around it, which is improving the appearance of the seafront. And quite frankly, it's an embarrassment for the council to have this disused toilet block still with no options on it to improve it going forward. So I think I should actually declare an interest actually at this point, being a Seaton Town Councillor as well. Sorry, I should have said that first. So continuing with my thoughts on this, I think we have to get to a point now where we need to move forward at pace to deliver something here. And Fossway Transition Limited have had a period of exclusivity with negotiating with the council to deliver something here, and I've been in support of that approach. But I think we've reached a point now where it's not progressing as well as we'd like, and I think we need to look at the wider picture, the bigger picture here, in order to speed things up and to push forward with redeveloping this eyesore. So I'm in support of option 1B, which would be to market the site. And I think Alison's just answered one of the questions I had in terms of what I would ask Cabinet to consider would be that with option 2, we strongly encourage Fossway Transition to put in a bid and an offer, but by opening it to the wider commercial sector, we'll hopefully have lots of other bids as well, and we can consider them all on their merits. And it's likely to throw forward some interesting ideas. I'd hope to think we wouldn't be looking at just the highest bid. We'd be looking at what the proposals would actually deliver for Seaton in terms of benefits for the aesthetics, for the economy, and for the wider seafront improvements that we're hoping to deliver. So I would ask Cabinet to go with option 2, to undertake a marketing exercise, but to explicitly underline and reinforce that it doesn't exclude Fossway Transition in putting forward a bid. We very much welcome them to come forward with a bid, but the time has come now where we need to move forward, and something needs to be delivered quickly on this site. So, and just another thought, I don't think we should exclude the possibility of a joint venture, and maybe that could be something that could be written in here, because we're looking to bring money in every which way we can. So there is the possibility of a joint venture. We might be able to generate some income ourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Councillor Hartnell. Can I come to Councillor Paul Hayward next, please?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I've made prodigious notes that I'll have to refer to, because this is such a complex matter. As long as I've been coming to Seaton, man and boy, this has been, as Councillor Hartnell says, a blight on the landscape. Seaton is blessed with the most glorious vista. And I think that's an established fact. It's utterly glorious. You then turn inwards, and we have something from the 60s that wouldn't even be countenanced to this day, that brings down the entire seafront view, and a closed toilet, peeling, stained, just an eyesore. So I don't think there can be anyone who is against the principles of seafront regeneration, doing something with the Moradunum. But this is an issue that has been dragging on for decades, and I'm grateful to officers and to members of Cabinet for having this considered as a matter of expediency today at Cabinet, so we can move forwards. I will be, with your agreement, Chair, putting forward some amendments to the recommendations shown. Some are slight tweaks in terms of wording, others are more substantive. But I think it's fair to say I welcome all of the representations I've had via email, telephone. No one's actually knocked on my door, thankfully, but certainly via social media, which has been incredibly prodigious. And people on both sides have had input. And it's not a unfair thing to say that the passions of Seatonians about the need to do something in this area are running high on both sides. And I've had representations from residents who believe one thing and have an opinion on one view and on others. And I'm grateful for all those people for taking the time to demonstrate that their love for Seaton is manifested in the way that they've put their views forward very fairly, without vitriol and without letting their emotions run away with them. So in terms of this, and obviously I'm grateful that the two board members, the cabinet members as well, are hoping to speak on this, but what I'd like to propose, Chair, is that recommendation, my apologies, someone's found the piano upstairs, recommendation 1B, that we do go with option 2, undertake a marketing exercise of the Moradunham site, and that there no longer is a special purchaser, that everyone is treated equitably and fairly, and that, yes, we encourage FTL to submit within that process. Recommendation 2, that Cabinet recommends that the Council should work collaboratively, and I would add in there, and cooperatively with FTL. There's enough bad blood and he said, she said, it's gone backwards and forwards. We've received correspondence from a director of Fossway Transition Limited only in the last 48 hours. And whilst I don't agree with everything that's been said, I can see how they perceive the issue. So I think they have said quite clearly that they don't need the Moradunham site to develop theirs. And I think I would applaud their efforts to bring forward the redevelopment of Fossway Court, because that in itself, even if you disregard Moradunham, that will have significant aesthetic and positive improvements for the Seaton seafront and the landscape there. So I applaud what they're doing in that sense. You know, they've made a very open admission that they don't need the Moradunham. And so, yes, I say carry on. You must carry on. You do carry on doing what you're doing for the benefit of Seaton. So that's and adding a word in. Obviously, there are the two parties are doing it for separate reasons. Fossway Transmission Limited is a profit-making company. They're doing it for their profitability. East Devon District Council does it for municipal and altruistic benefits. There's a wider vision to what we do for the good of Seaton, but also we have a duty of care, a fiscal duty to obtain the best value for our assets. We can't get away from that. Every local authority has that same duty. Recommendation 3, I'd like to add after the word Moradunham site, I'd removed could best be progressed and replace with the words can be expeditiously progressed, because we want to, you know, put a fire under this and get it moving. People of Seaton have waited long enough. We brought it forward to Cabinet. We're taking it forward at a pace. I understand there's views on both sides as to why things have stagnated and slowed down, but let's do it expeditiously. Let's not no one drag their heels. Both parties, East Devon District Council, officers, members, and also FTL, you know, responding to requests in a timely fashion is just good manners. It's courteous, you know, it gets things done. And finally, item 4, recommendation 4, I'm wholly in support of, but I will also be adding under the next agenda item, which is the Axe Valley Levelling Up Fund, I'll be adding a recommendation within that about how perhaps the Moradunham site can be included within that. I'll add a recommendation in, and perhaps using East Devon's Community Infrastructure Fund to jumpstart that project. We've discussed it, we talked about it, and I'll be happy to talk to officers and fellow ward members about using our money, East Devon's money, to help progress this scheme. It may well be that we have a joint venture. It may well be that we develop it ourselves and rent it out. It may well be that it's simplified. It may well be that it's improved, but only by undertaking topographical surveys of the site, only by going out to design professionals. I'm not a design professional. If I designed it, it would look like something a child would make with Lego. That's why we employ professionals to look at the design, to look at the public realm improvements, to look at the access, and we hope in conjunction with neighbours, and there's more than one neighbour here, there's other neighbours who we want to consult with, and the town council. Specifically, the town council I know has felt slightly kept out of the loop. Well, they are a key partner. they represent the people of Seaton at the ground level, and we must involve them. We must bring them into the discussion. So, sorry, Chair, I rambled on a bit. Item 1, 1B, option 2. That would be my vote on this. Item recommendation 2, I would add the word cooperatively after collaboratively. Recommendation 3, I would remove those words and add in expeditiously progressed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. Could you supply those in the usual way to Henry and the DSOs, please? Coming to Councillor Jack Rowland next then, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think as a starting point, I want to make my position clear on this subject. I want to see the Morridunham site redeveloped as an integral part of improving the seafront area to benefit residents and visitors. This saga has been going on for, I think Councillor Hayward said decades. I don't think it's quite that long, but certainly it's probably approaching a decade at least now. And during the last 2 years that I've been a member of this cabinet, I have been involved in meetings with the directors of Fossway Transitions Limited and our council officers. I'm fully aware of all the history and the discussions that have taken place over that period of time to try and conclude a deal that suits both parties. The history, as I said, predates the last 2 years, and I'm not going to go back over that period of time because, quite frankly, I don't think that would serve any purpose tonight to do that, because we need to face the situation as it is today and find a way forward, either involving Fossway Transitions Limited or another developer if we end up going down that open markets route. I still retain an open mind at the moment. I take on board what Councillor Hayward has said and his further recommendations. I just need to think about those a little bit more before we have a vote this evening. So at the moment, I won't second those, but I'd like to think about it a little bit more. And I know that Councillor Ledger is waiting to speak as the next ward member as well. So thank you, Chair. Over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. Councillor Dan Ledger, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think I might disagree with Councillor Rowland. I think it has been decades. The toilets have been shut since well, I was a child. So, and that's a fair few years ago now, Jack. So,
well, sorry if I could just clarify. I meant since FTL have been involved.
Cool. I'm jesting. I think turning to the actual issue in hand, I don't think any of the options are going to be acceptable to the residents of Seaton. They want to see delivery of the Morridunham. They've wanted to see it for years now. And nothing today really gives concrete assurances that we will be delivering the Morridunham and redeveloping it as soon as possible. So what I'd like from officers really is just some timetables or some ideas of how long it's going to take us to go to market, to come to a decision, to actually get us to a point where we are going to be in a position to redevelop the units. That's what the first kind of assurances that I want before I make a decision on which option to go for. Second to that is, how are we going to be certain that if we are to market the site and dispose of it, that it isn't just going to be sat upon and mothballed for years? How are we going to ensure that development actually occurs in a timely manner? I think that's a serious risk for the town. It's something that the residents are going to want to be answered. I don't think anyone sat here today can say that the building is a work of art. Everyone wants it demolished, everyone wants it developed, and everyone wants something decent on Seaton Seafront. It's how we get there, and that's what I'm looking for tonight, and I'll be led by officers and their responses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ledger. No other councillors to speak. So, Alison or Tim, or whoever, would you like to come back on any of what you've heard in the last 10 minutes?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so taking on board all the comments from the ward members and comments from Councillor Hayward there. Certainly we as officers are very aware of the time that it's taken. Certainly all the time that I have been at the local authority, while it hasn't been within my remit, I have been aware of this as a project has been being worked on by colleagues for almost 10 years now. So very aware of the issues, very aware of the drive and the need to see improvements happening at the site. So I take on board the comments and the suggestions that Councillor Hayward has added in to the recommendations. And obviously no concerns where those are mentioned there, certainly. I think in terms of timescales, any development does take time with lead-in times, but I think where we could have an opportunity to consider some feasibility work and to look at design options, and that could be something that could be looked at fairly promptly with existing teams of consultants that we're already working with, so on other projects. So that would be a starting point for members to have that information and financial feasibilities, design feasibilities that could start the process, and certainly thereafter we could identify and develop timetables for securing a planning permission, obtaining funding, and ultimately selecting developer, joint venture partners and delivering. So I'll leave it there, and whether Tim has anything to add to that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alison. Tim, back to you, please. Tim,
yeah, thank you. Thank you. Picking up on Councillor Ledger's question, I suppose Councillor Ledger wanted, I think, a date to say by this date it will have been marketed. What I think, as Alison has said, there is work that would need to be done before we get to that stage. So I'm reluctant to make a commitment that it will be by a particular date, because there are other steps involved first. What I would say is that for a property like this, ideally we would be going to the market now at the beginning of the summer. I don't want to be marketing, if we are to go down this route, I don't want to be marketing a property during seafront property in the depths of winter. So I think what I can say, Councillor Ledger, is that we will do our utmost to seek to try and market the property before the summer is out. But in terms of an absolute commitment, I can't give that, because it depends on the design work and the steps that we need to do first. Councillor Hayward referred earlier to an additional recommendation that he was going to put forward regarding the next agenda item, and I think if that recommendation were to be supported, there's funding there for that, so that gives it a real kickstart and would help in terms of timescales. So yeah, we will do our utmost to seek to get it to the market by the end of the summer, but I can't give a guarantee at this stage. In terms of the not wanting the site to be mothballed, and yeah, no, I get that concern completely. This would be an unusual disposal in that we're not only looking for a capital receipt, but we're looking for public realm works. So in essence, sort of a positive covenant. So because of the fact that we're asking and requiring someone to do something as a condition of any purchase, then we can incorporate certain conditions and timescales into that. So it does give us a bit more control, certainly over the public realm element, not necessarily in relation to the building itself, but as the public realm goes over the building, it would seem logical that the building needs to be dealt with first. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim, for that. Okay, so coming back now, please, the last two speakers, Councillor Jack Rowland and then Councillor Dan Leisure, and Councillor Haywood if he needs to come back. Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's really a question as well. If we ended up going down the route of the open market and a successful bidder was in place, as part of the conditions, do we seek evidence of the necessary funds being in place to actually complete the project? Because we've seen too much evidence elsewhere in Seaton and other sites where planning permission has been in place for some time, and very often the question is why development never takes place is because either funders have pulled out or the funding was not there in the first place. So I'm just wanting to know, can we ask for evidence that funding is in place?
Tim, are you happy to take that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, yes.
I'd only asked you because your yellow hand was up, Tim. I don't know if you.
Yeah, no.
That was,
yeah, no. It was a new hand, so I thought I'd. Yeah. So thank you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely we can. And if we were to go down the route of marketing the premises, then I would suggest we work with members, probably the similar group to members we've been working on in recent months on this, to agree before we market it how we want to go about marketing and how we will assess the offers. And as I said, in this instance, it's not just how much money, it is about the public realm. It's about deliverability, it's about track record, it's about the funding. So yeah, we will agree with members sort of a scoring mechanism to consider the bids that come in. So yeah, absolutely one of those criteria can be track record and financial ability to deliver.
Thank you, Tim. Jack, is that okay for you? Okay, thank you. Councillor Dan Leisure, please.
Thanks very much for letting me come back again, Paul. Thanks, Tim, firstly, for your answer. I wasn't trying to nail you down to a specific day. It was just to ensure that it was going to happen in a timely manner. It wasn't going to be delayed until next year. We aren't getting into, just delaying and delaying and delaying. We can't be in that position. I think my next point is really, it touches on what Councillor Haywood said and looking to the next agenda item. But if we were to use and partly what Councillor Hartnell said, is there any scope for us to put forward a joint venture bid on this, utilising some of the commercial infrastructure fund that we have at our disposal, that will then in turn boost up the levelling up bid that we're hoping to put forward? Obviously, I know that as part of the levelling up prospectus and criteria, we are required for match funding, and whether if we are to utilise some of the commercial infrastructure fund as part of the match funding, that will increase the likelihood of our bid becoming successful. I know it's obviously we are looking for an MP at the moment to write that off, but if we can get over that slight hump, then hopefully, is that an option, or should we be talking about it in the next agenda item?
I think the best thing to do now, Dan, is probably Councillor Leisure, is let's go back to Councillor Haywood's amendments there. Now, Paul, could you just reread just the amendments as they would read, and then come obviously to the later agenda item to the other thing you were going to do to match it up? Is that okay? Thank you.
I'm more happy to. I have forwarded it to Henry. Hopefully that's been received via email. I mean, they are very minor changes. They're mostly semantic wording. So obviously, disregarding recommendation 1 for the time being, members will vote on whether they go with 1A or 1B. Recommendation 2, the amendment, is that we add the word cooperatively after collaboratively. Just a tiny wording change there, Chair and members. Recommendation 3 is that on the third line, after the words Moradunham site, we replace could best be progressed with can be expeditiously progressed. Again, I admit it's only semantics and it's just simply words, but I hope words we can put into action, because we all want this to progress expeditiously. And that's it, Chair. Recommendation 4 is unchanged. Going technical resources, they cost money. You want things and experts, they cost money. So 1 unchanged, 4 unchanged, couple of wording changes to 2 and 3, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. So I can't see any more. I do see Mr. Child back again.
Thank you, and it's a new hand again. Sorry about that, Chair.
Okay.
Just picking up on Councillor Ledger's suggestion regarding a JV or us investing directly. As the recommendations stand, I think we probably preclude ourselves from doing that. So if we wanted to keep that option there, I'm not saying we necessarily would proceed down that route, but to keep that option alive, we might want to just add in an additional recommendation here. There are 2 ways. You either tweak option 2 along the lines of invest ourselves or market, but I think that probably just complicates things and perhaps gives out the wrong message. Or alternatively, you just add it in as an additional recommendation that as part of sort of our larger work around the Axe Valley and a potential levelling up bid, we don't dismiss the opportunity potentially to invest ourselves.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Ledger, would you like to amend the amendment slightly to that effect?
Yes, please. If I could put that forward as an amendment, please, Chair.
Okay. Question is what that is, I suppose. Tim.
Exactly as Tim said.
Yes,
I would recommend that it would be an additional recommendation rather than trying to overcomplicate option 2, i.e. 1B, and I think it would potentially send the wrong message. So an additional recommendation, I don't know. At this stage, the council or at this stage, Cabinet not to dismiss I see Henry's looking on with interest, dismiss
no,
the potential.
Yeah, so you've got not to do, we're getting into double negatives already. Henry,
Yeah.
what do you think? Is there a way you can help Tim clarify?
I was going to let Tim say it again.
Okay.
to refine what you're saying, and perhaps we can go from there. So if Tim can say it first, then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm not sure it'll be exactly what I said just now, Henry, because I can't quite remember. But let me try again. The council, sorry, I've lost for words now. There is a separate Axe Valley project study currently progressing. Full stop. This the recommendations within this report are not to preclude a possible opportunity to directly invest in the site. I'm sure between us we can further refine that wording, but I think that's broadly the gist of it, unless Alison has a better idea.
No, or Alison, do you want to get involved in this really agonising parlour game?
Thank you, Chair. I think really that it would be a recommendation that Cabinet recommends that the council considers that a joint venture approach for the redevelopment of the Moradunham site involving the council as an investing partner may be considered.
Okay.
So can't we just say that it reviews its position as a JV partner?
Well, sorry, Chair. I wonder that because we are saying that in recommendation 3 that we review how the redevelopment of the Moradunham site can be expeditiously progressed with a further report to Cabinet prior to commencing marketing of the site. And in that further report, which I acknowledge has the scope to impact on timescales because of lead-in periods to Cabinet, and has the potential to delay things further, but notwithstanding that, working with that when we do that recommendation, that's where there is included that joint venture opportunities working with the council to deliver a new development on the Moradunham site would be welcomed from the developer market, for instance.
Okay, thanks.
Chair, can I suggest? Yeah. Sorry, a much short.
Well, I was going to suggest myself. I think Tim, what I think we should do with this is, I think Cabinet perfectly understands what the intention is here. Can we just, Henry? Is it unless Henry, you've got a hole in one there? Can we just say that final fifth recommendation to be agreed between, well, the chair, I'm the chair, and the portfolio holder, which is Paul and yourself, and perhaps Tim, for the purpose of this.
Yeah, I think actually the wording can be quite straightforward. It's a lot easier when you write it down rather than trying to read it out aloud. Should the council, in recommendation 3, should the council wish to consider direct investment or JV, this will be subject to a separate report, subject to a further report. And I think that's really all we need to say.
I think it's even shorter than that, Tim, if you don't mind me saying. I think it's just how the redevelopment of the Moradunham site, in brackets, including possible JVs, close brackets, could best be progressed with a further report.
Agreed.
Fantastic. Now that is why, Tim, you go out in a hard helmet and Henry stays inside with his quill pen drafting law. No, that's fantastic. Thank you. Councillor Loudon, perhaps your point's been addressed. I don't know.
Possibly, Chair.
Okay, go on.
Let me just chuck half a dozen words in for consideration. Under item 3, recommendation 3, last line after the word progressed, it's similar, I think, to what Henry was talking about. So after the word progressed, we just say something like, and I'll read it at ordinary speed to start with, including the potential for the council to pursue a joint venture.
So I'm going to make Henry the arbiter of this. You are the sign-off.
Much better, of course.
So, Henry,
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Very good. Thank you very much. So can we please get, can we, after that fantastic discussion, can we now please vote on that? So green tick for yes, red crosses for no, yellow hands for abstain.
Chair, my apologies. Surely
yes.
With this, I think we still have, I'm going to take my green tick away, and apologies for the noise from above. Item 1 is still an either or option. So I think Cabinet needs to agree on recommendation 1, whether we go with A or with B, and then we move to 2, 3 and 4 substantively. Is that no, Henry?
Yeah, well, you've moved option 2 already with your. I think
my apologies. Sorry. Yeah. So I thought that was just my opinion, but I'm happy, Chair, to move 1B, option 2.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much. We all agree on what we're voting on. So can we now go to the vote? Green ticks, red crosses, yellow hands, please.
That's unanimous in favour, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Amanda. Thank you, Alison and Tim, very much for that as well, and Henry for bailing us out. And we go on to agenda item 17 now, the UK Shared Prosperity Fund prospectus. The report again from Andy Wood, Service Lead for Growth, Development and Prosperity. Andy, please.
I think you got the Axe Valley to come first, Chair.
Oh, sorry, I've just yes, I've skipped ahead. Sorry, I saw Alison's name, and then there it was again. I agree. I do this to Andy quite a lot, actually. This has happened before, isn't it? And then, okay. I push him on the stage and then hook him back off again. Terribly sorry, Alison. So agenda item 16, the Axe Valley project and Levelling Up Fund Round 2, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this report sets out the findings of the Axe Valley project stage 1 study undertaken by our external advisors, Avison Young, which considers potential development and place-making project opportunities within the Axe Valley, predominantly Seaton and Axminster. It also provides information on the government's Levelling Up programme and the key criteria for the Levelling Up Round 2 funding opportunity. The report sets out options for different funding bid packages that could go forward for a Levelling Up bid. The recommendations are as set out in the report, with a specific recommendation for funding package option 2 to be taken forward for a Levelling Up funding bid. The other recommendations set out in the report would enable officers and our professional advisors to prepare a bid, to consider what level, if any, of match funding should be offered by the council within that bid, and to report back to Cabinet with details of the final composition of a bid that's recommended. So those are the recommendations, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison. Again, Councillor Dan Ledger, please.
Thanks very much, Chair.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair. If you're going outside of Cabinet, I think Councillor Hartnell's got his
I'm terribly sorry. The yellow hand just flicked up on this screen. Thank you. Sorry, thanks, Jack. Sorry, Marcus. Councillor Marcus Hartnell, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, my mistake. I didn't press my hand up very quickly. So I have to say I'm a little bit underwhelmed and disappointed by this proposal. I sat in on the recent Axe Valley meeting and raised a number of concerns regarding the bid to our consultants. But nothing seems to have changed from that meeting to this report coming to Cabinet. So I'm a little bit miffed, really, because all the concerns I raised were acknowledged by the consultant, but no answers were given as to how they might be addressed. And I think other members in the room, and I think maybe even an officer, agreed with some of the comments that I raised and the concerns that are raised, and none of them seem to be addressed in this report. So I'm just a little bit concerned about the credibility of the bid, really. It just doesn't stack up. And I speak obviously as a local ward member that wants to see lots of these things happen in Seaton and in the Axe Valley. So I suppose there's a degree of frustration here as well, because I desperately want to see it succeed. But I can't understand why, with the information in front of me in this report, why you would think that this bid would succeed. There's just really big holes in it as far as I can see. I'll highlight a couple. And again, this is nothing new. These are concerns I raised at the Axe Valley meeting, and it's around gross value added in terms of the benefit that we will see from this investment. And you know, if you look at the public realm investment into both Axminster and Seaton, Axminster public realm, £1 million project realm benefits to be confirmed. So we don't know what those benefits are going to be. Seaton Seafront Enhancement, the proposed option 2, which is a £6.3 million investment, we don't really know what the gross value added to that will be, because within the report, the gross value added value of 6 million is based on the £10.9 million investment, which is for the entire project, not for the phase 1. So I'm assuming the phase 1 GVA would be a lot less. So, and the public realm other benefits that are given for the seafront scheme in Seaton include 40 jobs, 680 metres squared of commercial floor space and 69 homes, but they're already being delivered by the private sector. They will happen regardless of this bid. And I'm fairly certain that civil servants that look over this bid will be going through it with a very, very fine tooth comb and will expose this flaw fairly early on in the process. So, you know, as much as I want this bid to go forward and as much as I'd love to see this bid succeed, because I think we all have the same end goal in sight, I can't help but think that this is a waste of funding that we're spending on consultants. And it's not that we've done it, you know, we've done it once before with the first bid that went in for Exmouth. We paid consultants, the bid was unsuccessful. We're going to do the same mistake again. You know, and I know this, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the money's come into us from the Welcome Back Fund in order to pay consultants to work up these bids. So in theory, it's not our money, but it is still money that has come into this council that could be spent on other things to develop other things that could be more beneficial. And I'm just concerned that this bid is not going to succeed. And, you know, I think Cabinet need to think very, very carefully before they proceed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hartnell. I can help you with your last point. I remember sitting in on the meetings with Mr. Jupp and others about the Dinenway Exmouth bid, and his explicit advice, insistence to us was that the Welcome Back Fund money was spent on developing that Dinenway and Exmouth Town Centre bid. And that has been the direct instruction from the MPs. I totally agree with you. You know, there are other things that could perhaps be done with that same money, but that was coming from government. That wasn't coming from us. So let us, first of all, before perhaps we come back to everybody else, go back to outside of Cabinet. Let's go to, I mean, I suppose the other thing I really want to go back on this, but, you know, the two other rather glaring disadvantages around this is that unfortunately we are still in the we're still not in the most favourable tier for consideration by central government, and also, I don't know, perhaps Mr. Jupp may sign it off for us, but because the MP has formally resigned today, unless he has signed this for us yesterday, and I have no knowledge if he has, officers let me know, then we are in a bit of a pickle in terms of the timescale. Councillor Andrew Moulding, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, the whole idea of the Levelling Up Fund provides an opportunity, and I can perhaps understand Councillor Hartnell's concerns over the Seaton project, and I'm not party to the details of that. But as far as Axminster is concerned, within the Axe Valley, then obviously things have changed just recently because of Natural England's report on phosphate concerns with the River Axe. And that in itself makes the potential schemes less wide-ranging. And indeed, initially we talked about quite an imaginative scheme for Webster's, which I was quite excited about, but that obviously will involve residential development, and it would appear that the Natural England report scuppers that for the time being. However, with the report we now have, which takes account of the Natural England report, I would still hope that there are opportunities for Axminster within this Axe Valley package. And indeed, the development of small business units at the entrance to the Cloakham Lawns development is something that I would very much wish to support. And similarly, I believe that when we discovered that the Natural England report was going to inhibit the development of Webster's, then that was when we looked at the possibility of pedestrianisation in Axminster Town Centre and the potential for a one-way system, which we have been talking about for a little while. And I guess that's where the £1 billion for Axminster Town Centre public realm came for. So I have to say that in terms of my representation for Axminster, and I don't think either Sarah Jackson or Ian Hall are with us today for them to comment on it, but I would certainly wish to support the elements of the funding package which relate to Axminster. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moulding. I mean, we do still have this problem that we've got to get a signature and get it in by the 6th of July. We're on the 4th of May. There may be a by-election in time. I don't know. And I suppose the other point
if I could
to
just
make
come back on that, Chair, could I
yes,
come back on
please
that?
do.
I mean, I had heard that in the interim period, since the resignation of Mr. Parish, that his business could be continued for the benefit of the residents of Tiverton and Honiton by an adjacent member of Parliament, which could be either presumably Simon Jupp or indeed Mel Stride from north of Tiverton.
Okay, and we've got Mr. Williams coming in at this stage. Mark, please, to help us on that.
Yeah, so the benefit of this report is that it hopefully guides officers and guides the public and guides the council in terms of what it is the Cabinet would like to see achieved in the Axe Valley. We're in exactly the same position as Mid Devon are in. They've got great concerns about the Clumpton Relief Road, which is the project that they put forward under levelling up bid, which was supported in round one. My advice is we proceed on the assumption that there will be arrangements made for sign-off, whether it is Simon Jupp or another MP. I'm pretty sure that the department won't want to see an area disadvantaged by a technical requirement which it can't comply with merely because of sort of local political decisions in that sense. So let's focus in on, is this what we want to try and achieve, try and secure for the Axe Valley? If it is, it may come through this method, it may come through another method in the year or so to come, for example. But that would be my advice.
Thanks, Mark. Can I just, I don't know if you wouldn't necessarily, there's no reason for you to be aware of it, but I mean, it would be useful if an officer could confirm that. See, my problem here is, and I'm hearing what one of the directions Marcus, Councillor Hartwell, is going in. What I don't really want to do is to put this in, and perhaps it doesn't succeed, or does succeed, but it doesn't succeed. And then what we get is the opposition crowing about, well, you've wasted more consultancy fees. I mean, when it came to, and that's exactly what they did around Exmouth Dillon Way, exactly what they did. They put it on leaflets. So I just want to make it very clear that if that's what the Conservatives do this time, there is no justice in that at all. So if any officer wants to confirm that we weren't told by the MP to use a previous round of, effectively COVID recovery funding to put in the Dillon Way bid, then, speak now or forever hold your peace. But that is what happened. Councillor Hartnell, please. And then Councillor Miller. Sorry, Councillor. I'll come to Councillor Hartnell first.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back on what you said there. I mean, I'm not looking for any political gain in this, albeit, you're suggesting so. I want what is in the report to happen. I want to see the money come in to Seaton and improve the seafront. My point that I was making was that the concerns I raised at the meeting that we had earlier in April have not been addressed. So this isn't about political gain. I mean, we seem to have had a lot of politics going on this evening, and I take that comment sort of as being a little bit unfair. I'm making legitimate concerns about the credibility of the bid.
If I may, it was one of the 2 points you made. So the other points I'm going to come back to Tim and Alison on, which are about the quality of the bid. You absolutely did say that we shouldn't be wasting consultants' fees, and I have linked that up to what was said on the
but it's nothing to do with politics. It's to do with the taxpayers' money of East Devon, Chair. It's not to do with political gain, and it's to do with making sure that the money is used effectively to get the right outcomes. You know, and I
that's
think
right. But if it fails, what we don't particularly want is growing that it's failed. Which is what happened around the first in and way bid. I do have a right to make that point. Councillor Paul
quite
Miller,
rightly,
please.
but you also need to take on board my points, Chair. Thank you.
That's right. And we'll come to Tim and to Alison about those. Thank you. Councillor Paul Miller, please.
Thanks, Chair. I have precisely the same concerns that you do, Chair, because you've referred to the Exmouth Dinham Way bid. I hate these beauty contests that the government are making us undertake. And Councillor Hartnell raised some quite interesting issues. And I'd really like to know, as an East Devon District Councillor, just how much money is the District Council spending on preparing these bids? Councillor Hartnell suggested that the money, we could be using this money in a different direction for different kind of things. I'd like to know what those are. And I again also have concerns about the lack of an MP at the moment. So it would be good to actually understand how much money, consultants' money, by the way, has been used on this, just to get some perspective on this, because obviously, you know, the bid is for a significant amount of money, but having been an Exmouth member following the Dinham Way bid, you know, it's greatly disappointing. Greatly disappointing. I know we're in the lowest tier, but there were rumours swirling around county councils. I remember that, as I recall, that it might be successful, and we're all disappointed when it didn't turn out to be the case. So, you know, what are the realistic chances? How much of our resources are we pumping into this, and how much money are we pumping into this? Would be my question as a backbench member. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Miller. So let's, I'm sure those points will be addressed. Let's navigate our way back onto the dry land now of what we're actually going to do, what we're actually going to put in. Tim or Alison, Marcus has raised some quite legitimate concerns that he's not sure that this has really changed very much from the point where there were discussions with the consultants. Is there any comment you'd like to make on that? Yes, we've got you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'll just add a couple of points here. I think part of the issue with this is that we can only deal with the opportunities that we have, and part of the problem is there are a number of constraints regarding putting in bids, and one of those is timescales in delivering projects, and so. And also the point that Councillor Moulding made in relation to the Natural England and the phosphates issue for Axminster. Unfortunately, that took that project out of the running, because we just wouldn't be able to progress that in time to actually deliver anything within the timescales. And I think, in a sense, that it does in part go to the point about the GVA. We talk about job creation, and noting there are some that there would be tenuous links with the existing developments that are happening, but that we would talk about the value added by delivering the seafront, that the increase in visitors to the seafront, for instance, and indirect jobs that could be created. More specifically, we have got the employment sites, and I suppose what we were trying to create was the opportunities with those where there are jobs created, and there will be value brought into the towns, and that complement the opportunities that are less so in delivering commercial opportunities. So it is tricky, but you know we're trying to work with what we have and see if we can can bring forward some opportunity to obtain external funding. So that was the point on that. Did you want me to pick up on the consultancy fees?
Well, yes, Alison, what I was going to ask you was, I mean, as we move forward from this point on, are we incurring further substantial fees, or have we effectively incurred the fees already? Now it's just a decision about whether to put it in.
No, we would be incurring further fees in preparing for a bid, and those will be £30,000 or £35,000. I can't quite remember what was what for stage 1 and stage 2, but overall the package was 65,000, but 30 or 35 of that was paid for through the Welcome Back Fund, which we were able to use because we were able to spend that by the 30th of April. Unfortunately, that's now concluded. Otherwise, we would have had Welcome Back Fund left over to spend on this stage 2, but the timing precludes that. There was an approval given previously last year for 100,000 of business rates reserve fund to use towards levelling up bids. And so there is some funding left within that wasn't used on Exmouth that we can utilise for stage 2 bid for Axe Valley if the council wishes to do so.
That's an excellent summary, Alison. Thank you so much for that. I hope that's useful for all members. Thank you. Okay, so coming to Councillor Jack Rowland next, please.
Thanks, Chair. Well, getting back to really the subject we need to debate and agree about. As a former Seaton Town councillor, I was heavily involved in the Seaton Seafront Enhancement Scheme in trying to secure funding for this, for that particular scheme, where the planning approval that was given some time ago expired last year. I actually welcome this opportunity to submit a bid for the Levelling Up Fund, because I take on board Councillor Hartnell's point that he raised, and I do agree with him. But if you think in terms of what projects that we can deliver that meet the criteria for the bid, one of the main criteria for the speed that's needed to actually start any project is that we have ownership of the land in question. That was always one of the problems with the Webster site in Axminster, that it wasn't in the council's ownership, and there still would have been negotiations going on in connection with trying to purchase that site. So that was an added problem as well, apart from the new issue about the phosphates into the River Axe. So that's why I actually welcome putting this bid together, because we need to do something to meet the July criteria. The other factor is that East Devon has moved up from level 3 to level 2, so that does increase the chances of East Devon. But I'm still pragmatic about our potential successes of this, about how this might be viewed by civil servants, not least because we've seen with other funding that's been given out by central government, and to use the phrase that was used before about the beauty contest, quite often the winners in this don't always look at face value to be done on a fair basis. They quite often go to areas where there might have been other influences in play. I feel that option 2 of the report is the one that I will be supporting tonight. And I take on board as well, I was going to make the point as well about not having an MP in place at the moment, but I've also heard, and our CEO Mark Williams has mentioned it already this evening, that there shouldn't be a problem in theory about getting a signature from an adjacent constituency MP. So that's where I'm coming from this evening, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rowland, indeed, for that. This isn't straightforward, is it? Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I'm grateful to Councillor Miller for raising that phrase, and Councillor Rowland has used it. It is a beauty contest. Something that should have died a death in the 70s. We're now required by central government to prostrate ourselves in front of them, expend huge amounts of officer time, use consultancy fees because we are so cut to the bone as a local authority. We don't have the in-house resource to do it. If only we did, how wonderful would that be? But we don't, because of issues that members are well aware of. So if we apply, we might be successful. If we don't apply, we're guaranteed to lose. So therefore, I'm afraid for me, it's a no-brainer. You apply, we can still tweak this, and I'll come back to something Councillor Moulding said in a short while, but it's a lose-lose. You raised the point, Councillor Arnott, that unfortunately, this is used politically. We can't get away from that. I have a leaflet on my office desk where the use of consultants has been used as a political weapon. So you're fair to say it. Whatever anyone denies it, I have a hard copy leaflet. I can put it on the screen, but I won't. But it exists. So therefore, if we don't apply, we absolutely 100% will not get it. Therefore, if we do apply, there's a 1% chance, immediately we're on it's a better option for us. So we must proceed. A lot of funding has come from welcome back funding. Well, let's use it. We're encouraged to use it by our MPs. So that's the first point, Chair, on that. The second is, we're employing experts, and Councillor Moulding covered about the Axminster Town Council public realm improvements, possibly one way. How do you quantify? How do you quantify in pure GVA terms what a town centre regeneration, one-way system, traffic improvements will do? That's a question, I suppose, for Tim and for Alison to go back to the consultant and say, you quantify it, put a number in that box, because that's our job. That's your job. Use the research, use examples from elsewhere in the UK. You are a paid consultant. We're paying you to deliver results, find that number and put it in the report. Of course, it's going to have an improvement to GVA. The town looks better. And again, I already declared my interest as a clerk of Axminster. Every Axminster Town Council wants the town to be improved. Councillor Moulding does. Councillor Jackson, Councillor Hall aren't here. They will say the same. Councillor Hall in his county council capacity will say, yes, traffic blights this town. You deal with the traffic problem, the town can rejuvenate, can regenerate. That brings GVA improvements. So find that number, put that in the box. The final point, and I do take Councillor Hartnell's point about that one part of the bid looks weak, but on the flip side, one side of the equation looks phenomenally incredible. We're going to potentially spend, where are we? My apologies, it's on a report here, so the exact figure. We're going to potentially spend 7.69 million to create 30 million of GVA. Well, sometimes you have to look at things in the round. Yes, one side of the equation looks slightly, but all equations, you can swap them around and they still work. So I'm in hopes with the quality of the bid, with the quality of the presentation, the justification, the rationale, the reasoning, the logic behind it, that we use that and say, yes, actually one will help the other. Everything has a knock-on effect. That's why we employ consultants. Write it, I say creatively, but certainly positively with a bit of positive spin. Again, I come back to that first point. If we don't submit it, guaranteed to get nothing. No one else, Chair, members, has rang me up, has posted me a cheque for £10 million, £15 million. Seaton, seafront enhancement, is a £10.9 million project. If there's anyone in Seaton watching this now who wants to give East Devon £10.9 million to develop it, something that's desperately needed, please come forwards. We'll snatch that cheque out of your hands. But there isn't. But this is an opportunity to use central government funding willingly given, offered, and we have to bid for it. We have to go through this tawdry process instead of a more dynamic, logical way of saying, yes, your district is named in numerous reports as being high on the list of deprivation, high on the list of social need. But instead, we have to hawk ourselves out there using a framework laid down by government. So we have to play their game. We will play their game. I suggest we submit this bid, we use our consultants to make it as excellent as it possibly can be, fill in some of those gaps, find some GVA figures to put in there, and let's bid for it. Because if we don't, what's the point of us doing anything? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. I'm happy to come back outside of Cabinet to Councillor Marcus Hartnell, please. Marcus.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me come back in. I do appreciate that. Just a couple of very, very brief points on what Councillor Hayward just said. I'm not saying we shouldn't apply. That's the message there is wrong. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that following the meeting that we had at the beginning of April, nothing has changed following concerns that were raised. I don't believe the bid is strong enough. I don't think it's money well spent as it stands. So I would welcome to see improvements to it. And if that means additional GVA figures that come forward that can be substantiated, then brilliant. But as it stands, nothing's changed from our April meeting. And I don't believe the consultants have really told us anything that we didn't know as local ward members already. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's an absolutely fair point, Marcus, and I think we can all accept that. And we, of course, do have time for the consultants to do the more work on that. And I think it's important that you, as a district and county councillor, have gone on the record saying that. So, Tim, what do you think? Councillor Hayward is clearly inclined to propose that we move ahead. I think Councillor Hartwell is saying, well, can we do better with the bid? So what do you think?
So yeah, no, I think like a number of members, I too also agree with much what Councillor Hartnell has just said, and we've acknowledged that. But as other members have said, it is the bid sort of in the round. Now, what's important is that so out of the recommendation that comes from today's cabinet meeting will then be the working up of stage 2, which is the preparation of the bid. Now, if we go back to the Avison Young report that they issued a couple of months back, and is a background paper to today's cabinet report, against the Seaton Seafront project, it summarises the business case feasibility and also issues to address in business case at stage 2. So that's what we acknowledge we will need to address in stage 2. So from now to submitting the bid, and I'm not going to read it all, you'll be pleased to hear, but I'm just picking up one bullet point, which is evidence of need for change and additionality, why seafront enhancement will improve visitor offer and improve image and will achieve stated outcomes, how the project adds value to commercial developments and their deliverability will be improved. So we've acknowledged that we need to do that. I acknowledge it's not going to be straightforward. However, there is a story here, and it's how that bigger project across the Axe Valley, the employment, but also the public realm enhancements fit together into a package of, and this is the important thing, deliverable projects. They are projects that are deliverable. They're projects that we have control over. So yeah, Councillor Arnold, yes, absolutely, in terms of what you've raised about the gross value added for the seafront enhancement, but we've acknowledged that, and we've acknowledged that we will need to address that in stage 2.
Okay, thanks, Tim, very much for that. I hope that's some justified reassurance to Councillor Hartnell there, and I think it's quite right to ask those questions. So those comments are noted, Marcus. Thank you very much. Just coming back out then finally to Councillor Dan Ledger.
Thanks very much, Chair. Again, like everyone, completely agree with the words of Councillor Hartnell. I think there's a lot of us that were a bit dismayed when we had the first set of meetings, and not a lot's changed. What I'm hoping is if we can agree this tonight, that going to stage 2, we will see an improved bid coming through. I just want to go back slightly to the last agenda item and whether that, and ask Tim and Alison whether that has any bearing or effect on this agenda item. So with the position now that we've taken with the Maura Dunham, will that then figure into the levelling up bid? And then also you talk about utilising 10% public work loan board funding. I asked a question at the previous agenda item. Can we just get that answered as well? And then touching on the commercial investment fund. Thank you.
Okay, can I come back to Alison then, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there would be the opportunity to incorporate any feasibility work for Seaton Moradunum, and for any inclusion of that to be within any future funding bid. So that would then offer further commercial offer for any new commercial development at the site. So that can be looked at. So the recommendation can be amended to incorporate that as an addition to the Seaton package. And then in relation to your second point about funding and match funding, then I mentioned the PWLB, but equally the commercial investment fund could be utilised, but I'd defer to Tim to comment on that in particular. Thank you.
Okay. Tim, anything you'd like to add at this stage on that? I don't think so. No. Okay, right. Thank you very much. Okay, so Dan, back to you, please, Councillor Ledger.
Thanks, Chair. So just in light of that, could we add in the additional recommendation just to cover off the Moradunum into the feasibility work into this? And then just to kind of cover ourselves, where it says the fourth line, the Cabinet approves the contribution of up to 10% match funding. Can we just put in minimum at the start of that so that we can then utilise other funds, such as the Commercial Investment Fund if necessary?
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Ledger. Henry, have you managed to capture those minor amendments that that Councillor Ledger just suggested, or?
I've got the minimum 10%, and the other is Councillor Ledger talking about the wording that Councillor Hayward had mentioned earlier. Let me just, I'm not sure where I just put that. I put it somewhere very sensible, and now I can't find it. Oh, there we go. So that wording was the Cabinet approves the inclusion of the Moradunum site within the option 2 funding bid for the Axe Valley project, including seafront regeneration, and directs officers to instruct our retained consultant to draw up plans for a redevelopment of the Moradunum site, including public realm improvements, and to undertake, as a matter of urgency, a topographical survey of the site to determine what can realistically and aesthetically be delivered on that site.
Okay, the Councillor Ledger.
Is that happy with that? I'm happy to propose that, Chair. I just want to make sure Alison and Tim are okay with that before we go forward. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Rowland, are you coming in to second or amend?
Yeah, I'm happy to second those amendments. And I would just say as well that the Moradunum site was originally included in the expired planning approval for the seafront enhancement scheme. Excuse me. So I think that makes perfect sense to include it in this bid as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Rowland. Oh,
yeah,
are you still going? Okay, well, we're about to do that. We're about to do that. So in which case then, committee, can we go to a vote on this, please? Green ticks, red crosses, and yellow hands.
That's unanimous in favour, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Amanda. Now, very sorry, everybody, that for two reasons. One, that we've well overshot the 2 hours to have a short break. And two, as ever, people who've been waiting for these last items that we're not going to get there until after the break. So apologies for that. The last two items to come will be agenda item 17, which will be the UK Shared Prosperity Fund prospectus, and agenda item 18, the car park issues. And so if we can reconvene, please, at 8:35 and in then. Thank you. 8:35, everybody. Are we all back? Maybe not.
Are you ready to start the meeting, Chair? We are still streaming on YouTube.
Yes, I'm so sorry,
Yes.
Amanda. I think I said something, but I might have been on mute. So yes, absolutely. Yes, I'd forgotten. It was just up to me to start it, isn't it? So let's get going again, please, at agenda item 17. As ever, Andy, so sorry for keeping you waiting. So the UK Shared Prosperity Fund prospectus, Andy Wood, Service League Growth, Development and Prosperity.
Thank you, Chair. So the prospectus for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund was published on the 13th of April. This was keenly anticipated as basically the fund is the replacement for European structural funds. It offers the prospect of securing just under £1.8 million over 3 years for the district. That is subject critically to an investment plan, both being submitted to government by the 1st of August and thereafter being approved. The prospectus very much emphasises the need for a logic chain to be developed between the local context, strategic priorities, and then the subsequent choice of a menu or choice from a menu of interventions which are outlined at Appendix A. You can see in the report at paragraph 3.3, 6 potential examples of how the local context can link to our own strategic priorities, including strategies such as the poverty strategy that could be worked up into the final investment plan. Three quick points, Chair, if I can emphasise within the report. One is the need for a local partnership group to help steer the development of the investment plan. There's very much an emphasis on achieving consensus amongst quite a wide range of stakeholders. And you can see there's a suggestion around a potential membership for the group, which I think it was picked up by in the public speaking section as well, in paragraph 3.5. Secondly, around the county deal, obviously that is still emerging through to October. The guidance is clear that the investment plan for the district should be submitted on a standalone basis, but there is obviously a logic and merit in aligning effort across the 8 districts in Devon, and there is certainly work going on through Team Devon to see how particular activity or interventions, for example, around business support or employment and skills could be aligned, therefore to be more cost effective going forward. And finally, around programme management, government certainly not giving the district money for 3 years and then coming back in 2025. There is an expectation that will be 6 monthly reports. There will be clawback on a yearly basis if monies are not spent. And therefore, building from the, I think, the successful experience with equivalent panels for the discretionary funding over the last couple of years, there's a recommendation for an 8-member panel to be established to provide, if you like, the oversight of how those funds are deployed. And then lastly, Chair, just a very quick point, there are, for each delivery geography as it's known, there's a sum of £20,000 being made available to support the development of the investment plan, and there's a recommendation that the use of those funds are approved to help develop the investment plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Andy, may I ask please for any members from outside of Cabinet who would like to speak on this item, please to raise your yellow hands. Councillor Paul Miller, please.
Thanks very much, Chair.
Had you just put your hand down?
I didn't. I've changed it to some weird other symbol. I'm sorry about that.
Go ahead, please.
So, this looks like a really interesting development. So, just wanted to make a comment about the membership. Not a political point whatsoever. More of a place-based point. Currently, there'd be no guarantee in the sort of elected panel that there would be any. Correct me if I'm wrong. Any councillor from Exmouth guaranteed, and as Exmouth is the biggest town in the district, it would be nice, whoever that may be, and I wouldn't put myself forward, I don't have the time, but there's 14 councillors in Exmouth. It would be good to get at least one elected voice from Exmouth, because when we look at some of the prospectus, the prospectus of the Prosperity Fund, there are things that I think really do relate to Exmouth. For example, looking at restoring services to communities which have been lost, and I note that the job centre are referred to as one of the external partners. Exmouth did have a job centre, and as a town of 35,000 people and growing, I think we probably still should have a job centre. And to me, it's absolutely awful that some of my friends, a few of whom are unemployed, have to travel all the way to Exeter to go to a job interview. So there's lots of interesting things that I'm sure this panel will look at, but just wanted to raise the parochial point there, Chair. Thanks.
No, not at all, Councillor Miller. And I had raised that very point in discussions as well. At 3.6, it does say members of Cabinet are asked to consider this list and advise on any additions or alternatives. A first meeting of the group will then need to be convened as a matter of urgency. So that is a very interesting point, Councillor Miller. I'm not sure how this council is also, I'm not entirely clear how it's represented on that, but we'll come back to that, I'm sure, in a second. Councillor Brewster Sarum, please.
Thank you so much, Chair. Yes, I totally endorse what Councillor Miller has said earlier for an Exmouth representative. I think that would be a very positive move. And I also wish to draw Cabinet's attention to what our earlier public speaker mentioned about Cabinet considering adding the Southwest Enterprise Partnership, Devon Wildlife Trust and the Chamber of Commerce to this list. So I'm not sure whether this will go ahead with the Cabinet's thoughts, but I raised it in the hope that you may give it further consideration in your infinite wisdom. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor de Sarum. Councillor Steve Gazzard, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Exmouth is united tonight, as you can see. I just wanted to agree with Councillor Miller and Councillor Brewster Sarum, Chair, and hope, as you say, you may give it some thought. Thank you. Thank
you very much. Before coming back to other councillors, and forgive me, Andy, I think I asked you this question. It may have been Tim, but I did say, well, where's this list come from? And I think it was said it's the list that's sort of been used before, as there's some precedent here. But anybody happy to take that from the officer side?
So in terms of the list of 8 councillors, so that very much mimics the panel that currently sits in relation to the Innovation and Resilience Fund. So that's where it's been taken from as, if you like, a model, Chair.
And the list at 3.5 of the kind of the stakeholders there, I think that's the question that's being asked as well.
Oh, sorry, Chair. So yes, it was basically a best interpretation of the guidance, or around who should be represented on that group, which is a response to paragraph 2.3. So that's, if you like, a best interpretation of how that could sit within the district. Just to pick up on the points around the 3 suggestions that were made earlier, I think the Southwest Enterprise Partnership is the heart of the Southwest Local Enterprise Partnership. and certainly you could invite them. I suppose one of my fears is that each of the 8 Devon districts will be simultaneously trying to invite the same stakeholders onto a series of quite intense work over a 12-week period, and they'll feel quite quickly overwhelmed. The Team Devon approach is looking to reconvene some of the recovery groups that have been played a very important role, I would suggest, over the last 2 years, including representations from the local enterprise partnership, for example. So it may be better to engage through, if you like, the kind of county convene group as well. But there's certainly an opportunity to invite the LEP, as there would be for the Devon Wildlife Trust, for example. We've suggested at the moment the OMB partnership, National Trust and Clinton Devon Estates, you could add to that. And finally, I think around the Chambers of Commerce, it's a tricky one. I think we did think about the Exeter Chamber, who I think have a significant proportion, just less than half of kind of East Devon businesses, or you could go to one of the town chambers, for example, Exmouth. There isn't, though, a single East Devon chamber that would provide you, if you like, would neatly snap to the geography, and that was part of the challenge.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Paul Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, actually, thanks to Andy and his team for getting us to this point. We're talking about just under 1.8 million. We know in reality, over 3 years, that doesn't buy you an awful lot. But again, I'll not be dismissive. Let's grab it while we can and use it, every penny, to the best advantage of East Devon across the board. Just following on from Andy's point he just made about the calls from all the districts, all seemingly wanting the same resource because we're all having to do the same thing. And that's a point very well made. So looking through this list, the citizens' advice, bless them, they work on a shoestring. I mean, you're lucky to get an appointment if you can. So they'll soon be overwhelmed if you have 8 districts all after the same people. Devon Association of Local Councils, bless Cara and Rebecca, there's 2 of them in that office. So if they're being called from pillar to post, they're going to struggle with resource. Similarly, AOMB partnership, but it's more East Devon localised, but certainly the National Trust and the Police and Crime Commissioner. Poor Alison, she's going to be doing nothing but sitting in these meetings, especially if the Devon people get involved. So I think some realism here that we might ask them, but we might not get huge amounts of response because they're going to be pulled from pillar to post. But certainly, I think, given the size of Exmouth, and Axminster has a Chamber of Commerce, Ottery has a Chamber of Commerce, but Exmouth is essentially 1/4 of our entire population. Exeter, as you said, Andy, has 1/2 of East Devon businesses, so maybe that's where we go to. And target things specifically for East Devon. Some of these people I'm sure would love to take part, but administratively and logistically, I'm not sure how much we're going to get out of them because they don't operate with a great amount of with a spare capacity, I would guess. But let's ask. And in terms of the 8 panel, that works well with RF. So let's replicate it. If it doesn't work, or we struggle finding political balance because of unavailability of councillors, obviously, a lot of it's going to be done via Zoom. So that helps. We had that discussion earlier in the week. I'm very happy with this, and I'm certainly not going to turn down £1.8 million. And I'm grateful to Andy and his team because they'll be doing all the work. They'll be filling in the monthly reports, the 6-month submissions. It's another officer-led program, and we lean heavily on them. And they need acknowledgement and thanks for what they're going to do for us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Mindful of other speakers coming forward, does occur to me, and I'd be very interested to hear from both Councillors Loudon and Ragg in a way. Councillor Miller, can I ask you again? Population of Exmouth is
35,000, I think. Eileen will correct me.
35,000.
35, 36. They die, they're born, you know.
Yeah. And the members, is it 16 from Exmouth in total?
14.
Yeah.
14. I mean, not to in any way, sort of lead the debate, but you can see an argument, can't you, for on the programme management panel, a little bit more representation from Exmouth, but interested to see what other people have to say about that. Councillor John Loudon, please.
Well, thank you, Chair. First of all, I will say to my colleagues from Exmouth, just look at my face. I'm smiling as I say Sidmouth. And as you know, Chair, I always say Sidmouth. So that's a cheap place point. The serious point is the point about the. I go to paragraph 3.5, the list of the proposed membership, and I don't envy Andy when he was trying to pull this together, because he's got the guidance that we have to closely follow, because if we don't, then we start, I'm sure, getting penalised and tutted at. So I understand why there's about, I think if you add them all up, I think there's about 25 individuals there on that list. Councillor Hayward's made the valid point that, well, you know, some of them are probably going to find their time slightly pulled in various directions. So will they or won't they be able to give it the time and the energy that we would like them to give to it? So it seems to me we've got to start somewhere. And that's as good a starting point as any. And I think Councillor Hayward was also making the point, which was about the smaller panel of 8. We can see how it works, and then if we need to, we review it. And I say the same about 3.5, because then I say with a serious point, you know, we've talked about Chamber of Commerce when we talk an awful lot about business here, but we also have to think, in my opinion, about the people who work in the Southwest. So there's the Southwest TUC, for example. You know, they have a role to play. So and I'm not putting that forward as a proposition. I use it as an example of the organisations we might want to, with a bit more leisure, just reflect upon whether or not we would like to encourage them to engage with us through this process. So I'm content at this point to go with what is in the report, Chair. Thank you. Apart from making sure Sidmouth is very well represented.
Where's this place? You keep mentioning Councillor Ragg, please.
Thank you. Just to say, there are a number of smaller trusts. I've been a trustee on Exmouth Welfare Trust for about 26 years coming up. There's the Westwood Trust, there's the Payne Trust, lots of various trust bodies. And I'm sure that I know that Budleigh Salterton have got one. Can't remember the name of it, but I was a trustee there at one time. So there are lots of trusts spread throughout. But I think to say that Exmouth is the largest town in East Devon, no, it's not. Exmouth is the largest town in the whole of Devon. So I think that's worth pointing out.
It is.
Norman family.
Good. Okay. So Councillor Exmouthian, Councillor Nick Hookway next, please.
Yes, support what my other colleagues from Exmouth have said. And looking at the list, I think it's a very skewed list compared to what some of the criteria that we're sort of bidding for. E6, for example, support for local arts, culture, heritage, creative activities. You've only got the arts and culture forum group there. You need other people who've got an interest and can be effective in that point. Also thinking about green skills and decarbonisation. If you're serious about that, I think one group that should be on there is Exmouth Transition, who have done a lot of good work on that as well. So I think that the group there needs to, we need to rethink of that and make sure we've got a broad and balanced, because I don't know why it's broad. I don't think it's balanced at the present time. Sorry to say that, but there we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hookway. So I think what we're picking up, without a shadow of a doubt, is that Exmouth should certainly have some more representation on the advisory panel. I've just been looking at the panel of 8, so to speak. I can't quite see how it goes in there. On the green agenda, we do have the portfolio holder for climate action is on there, so that supports that. On the art side, if you'll allow it, I'm I suppose moderately associated with that, so I would be sitting on it as well. There isn't an Exmouth heavy hitter on that councillor thing, but there could be, because there are meant to be 2 Conservative members. So Councillor Desarum, maybe I might suggest that you pop yourself forward for that. Who knows? An independent member, I don't think there's a, is there an Exmouth option? No. Anyway, not quite sure how we can fiddle with that at the moment, but it does seem as if, Andy, there is some very good thinking coming up about the panel. And so if Councillor Ragg and Miller and Hookway and Desarum et al. Would like to just email Andy with a list of these people, perhaps that might be, can you bear to receive that, Andy, over the next couple of days? And see if we can sort of work that panel up a bit.
Yes, Chair. I think Henry may need to come in, because I think there was a point there about being politically balanced as well. So whether the expanded numbers kind of distort that.
Oh, I was only thinking on the sorry, the sort of advisory panel with the police and all the rest of it. Not
sorry,
opposition
yes.
of the
yeah. Sorry, I get confused between the two.
Well, yes, it is, isn't it? But Henry, anything you'd like to comment on this at this stage, anyway?
Well, I can add, on the group of 8, it isn't politically balanced, but it is cross-party, and I mean there is a clear distinction. The difficulty I've got is if you don't nominate somebody who is an Exmouth member, then you're reliant on the groups putting forward somebody, as I think you've already identified. So, you know, I've got 2 conservative. There would be 2 conservative positions and 1 independent member. There are 2 independent members who are Exmouth related, but you're still reliant. So I think either you make it to ensure it's a representation of those around the district, or you go for a party based, and you can't necessarily guarantee it. But as you've quite rightly identified, Councillor Desarum has already said that, you know, I took it from him that he would be keen to be sitting. So perhaps you could rely on the Conservatives to put him forward.
Yes, and then it's a question about whether perhaps Councillor Wibley might be an independent representative. It's that kind of thing. I mean, I just one final round on this. Sorry to be tedious. Just wonder whether we should try and find a way of giving Exmouth. I mean, I'm not playing to the crowd here. I just think it's a huge settlement. If there's a way in which we could just add an Exmouth.
I mean, you could add Councillor Hookway as another portfolio holder, but then you are starting to make it very cabinet heavy. I mean, it's already relatively cabinet good.
No.
Or substitute Councillor Hookway for one of the other portfolio holders on there. So there's ways and means to do it, but or you increase the size. I mean, I am concerned about saying it must have an Exmouth member when you're making it open to the groups to put whoever they want forward. It starts to add an extra layer of complexity in trying to make it work.
Okay, so let's, if we can, let's do it through the means of some creative suggestions through Andy and you for people who might be, you know, Exmouth based. A good idea for the advisory panel. But we don't want Exmouth members as an entire coach load of people turning up from the Bridge Club and, you know, whatever else, you know, the kind of ice cream hut. So give that some thought. That would be lovely. Thank you. Councillor Jack Rowland, please.
I was actually going to make an offer, unless it's essential that I'm there as finance portfolio holder, to give up my post on that in favour of Councillor Hookway, so that he could be an Exmouth representative.
Yes, I'm sure that could be done, Henry, couldn't it, as a start?
This is for the I'm wondering whether I was confusing things, but this is for the programme management panel that we're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. If that's what you want to do, that would be fine.
Councillor Hookway, would you be?
I think Councillor Rowland has been extremely generous, and I accept
happy to
his
do
offer.
that.
Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, even when the season's over. So he's, okay, that's very good. Thank you. So if we just make that change, and we're noting that we're going to try and get a little bit more creative Exmouth-wise on the other panel as well. Henry, are we taking a vote on this?
Yes, please, because if you're
yes, of course we are.
Payment of panels,
okay, so with that amendment, that the portfolio holder for finance becomes the portfolio holder for culture, leisure, tourism, and sport. Everything else is as the same. So can we please go to a vote on that? Green ticks, red crosses, yellow for abstain.
That's unanimous in favour, Chair.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Thank you, Andy, again. Again, sorry for another late finish. And so we now come to our final agenda item.
30 homes are being downvalued.
What? Who was that? Oh, I can't, honestly. We're all going crazy, aren't we? So car park issues, agenda item 18, and bringing to the stage, we are going to, so let me just find the appropriate point on the script. We have a report. Now, it's co-authored, it says, by John Symes and by Andrew Ennis. But I don't know, John or Andrew, who's Andrew, you're looking keen and Mike also, is it you?
Yes, if I may, Chair. You've had
yes, please do.
3 hours of some very strategic and important debate. We're now going to be brought down to earth, I'm afraid, with some much more mundane matters. A couple of things, really. First thing I wanted to talk to you about is the issue of our car parks cash collection. Hopefully that's a relatively straightforward matter covered in the report. If I could take that one first, you'll see that our cash collection contractor sadly went out of business back in the autumn, and we've been trialling a few things in-house with our partners in Teambridge District Council, and we're now asking you to grant an exemption to standing orders for various reasons to enable us to move that arrangement to a more permanent basis. Key issue really is that people are moving away from cash, which actually suits us as a business quite well. It's something we discussed in the car parks task and finish forum over the last couple of years anyway. So the pandemic's precipitated that. For the last 12 months, for the first time, we took more of our income in non-cash streams than we did in cash. So it's actually quite a difficult contract to tender now. We're not quite sure how busy it's going to be. Having said that, there's still well over £1 million coming in cash every year, so we do need to collect it and deal with it. So hand in hand with that proposal is a recommendation for an additional member of the team to enable us to keep that service running properly throughout the whole year. We've been able to do it through the winter, but we're really going to struggle to run a service in the busy summer months without an extra team member, but it's all budgeted for. We have a budget set aside for running the cash collection contract, so if we don't run that contract, we can easily employ another team member. So the first recommendation there is that we'd ask you to delegate those arrangements to the strategic lead for finance to finalise the terms and to enter into an appropriate agreement with partners at Teambridge Council, and to authorise us to recruit a new member of the team to help us do that in-house. Then the next section of the report is probably the one that's going to cause us more trouble. As I think you know well, we formed a task and finish forum a couple of years ago. It met at the end of 2019, I think, and into 2020. It then paused because of the pandemic, obviously. It picked up again in March 2021 and made certain recommendations in respect to a policy for motorhomes and camper vans, which is on your agenda today to consider. And then it also left a number of items of unfinished business, which I've set out towards the end of my report in the items numbered 1 to 6 in summary, which I think are items we perhaps don't need to deal with today, but sets out some sort of roadmap. I think, as most members know, I'm taking early retirement in a couple of weeks' time, so I'm handing over to John Symes and Simon Davey in the finance team to run things. So I thought it might be helpful just to set out where we've got to formally today, to draw a line perhaps under my service, and to John a starting point for future work. So if I can come back to the recommendations from the Task and Finish Forum in respect of motorhomes, that for me now is the challenge, which I'm not sure if you want to reopen the whole debate. We spent a number of hours discussing the need for a policy. We've heard earlier from Mr. Cathro on this subject as well. I think in summary, the visitors to East Devon do arrive in motorhomes and camper vans, so we can't ignore that. We had a policy that was formed in 2015, which said we didn't want to allow them to stay overnight in car parks. That was the business of other people running campsites. But the reality is they're here, they're parking in residential areas and all over the place, and they actually quite like to park in car parks, and in reality there's an income stream for us if we embrace that. So the debate in the TAF considered all of those elements and has come up with some recommendations that we as a district council could and perhaps should adopt a framework policy that says where it's appropriate, we will allow overnight stays, and those decisions should be made with appropriate consultation with town or parish councils and ward members. The most pressing one of those I would suggest is Exmouth, where we've been running a trial for 3 years into year 4. That trial probably should end because we didn't put any resources into managing it properly. So as Mr. Cathro indicated, the letter from Mr. Taylor said has a number of issues that aren't properly managed. I would agree they're not. But in the new proposed policy, they would be properly managed. It's really a question of going back to the town council's TAF in Exmouth and working through what they would like to see in Exmouth if the Cabinet today decide they would like to approve that framework policy. And I think then it's a situation where we'd say it's ditto for other towns and parishes across East Devon to work out whether they also would like a policy that allows overnight stays in council car parks or not. But I think the situation is long overdue for regularising. So I think the proposal is relatively simple. There's a suggestion from me that we should embrace the fact that people are visiting in this way. We could have a framework policy that says, yes, we'll happily accommodate them where it's appropriate, but we'll do it carefully with local consultation. And I think there's a significant revenue stream to be earned from doing this properly. I'm also suggesting that to do it properly, we again need an extra team member, which would be fully funded from the increased revenue. So again, that's in your recommendations, but that one is currently outside of approved budget, so we need to be a recommendation on to full council if you're minded to approve that one. And then the final thing that I think we need to touch upon is a clear recommendation from the TAF. Isn't straightforward. It was a recommendation that we should explore what's the most appropriate use of the former Exmouth Lorry Park. As I think you're aware, it's been closed for a good 2 years now. It was the home for the compound for the tidal defence works, so we closed the lorry park with really no immediate effect. The lorries have been sharing space with the coaches in the adjacent coach park. That seems to have worked reasonably well, and I certainly feel that the proposal that we look at the lorry park site as a really good option for a dedicated motorhome and camper van facility in Exmouth should be explored further. I know that's not universally accepted, and there are some concerns from some ward members, which I may well hear from shortly. If we do pursue that, there are a number of constraints, and the most pertinent one, I think, is that it would need a planning consent, and as part of that process, we would need to consult on the impact of the development on the ex-estuary and on the migratory birds particularly. There's a section in the report from Ed Freeman setting out the fact that that's by no means a straightforward process, but I'm nonetheless suggesting that's, in my opinion, at least as an officer, the most appropriate use of the land and something we probably ought to pursue. And then the final issue for tonight, I think, is to flag up that in the absence of its substantive former use as a lorry park, that piece of land has recently become occupied by a number of people who are living in their vans, on camper vans in Exmouth. Some of them certainly we've spoken to, and they are working in the town. We have discussed this with Councillor Whibley and Councillor Daly particularly, and with also with Councillor Jeff Young. We have not turned a blind eye, but we haven't taken any action to date on that meanwhile use. We would really welcome a steer today from Cabinet as to what you see as the substantive long-term use for this site. Do you see it going back to a lorry park? Do you want me to pursue it as a potential dedicated motorhome facility? And if either of those are yes, what would you like me to do in the interim in respect to the people who are currently living there effectively? There are typically between 10 and 20 on any given night now using the site. Yeah, I think I might leave it there, Chair, if that's okay.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. And just going through the recommendations, if I may, because I'm just trying to work out how we debate this tonight. So the first recommendation, which is around cash collection, is, I mean, it seems pretty non-contentious to me, but you need a decision tonight, Andrew, don't you?
It would be helpful to have some authority to regularise that situation, I think, yes.
Okay, and then the second one, which is EDDC pay and display car parks by camper vans and motorhomes. Well, presumably we need to get round to that for this summer as well. Do we?
Again, Chair, it would be helpful to have a policy this year. I mean, you may decide you want to explore it further, depending on the maybe a further TAF. In fact, I think Mr. Cathro might have advocated such a thing. Whether you can approve the framework and send this back to an Exmouth TAF to debate specifically what's needed for Exmouth is potentially a way forward.
But that's very interesting. And then obviously the third recommendation would flow from that in any case, because it's covering the management of the camper vans and the motorhomes policy. And then the final one is about the lorry park. So what I just want to encourage members of Cabinet and members of Council to be mindful of tonight is that there are probably only a limited number of firm decisions we can and I think should make tonight. This is having come out of the really extensive, very technical matter of the car park charges over, which basically taken us up, through the 4 months year. We now come to, and certainly my view is that Cabinet shouldn't just plough on with these things and probably not make any binding decision tonight on most of it. But coming out first, please, to Councillor Joe Whibley.
Thank you, Chair. And can I just say thank you to Andrew for all his help since I've been a councillor, and especially on this, and best of luck. And I'm going to be a bit parochial, apologies. So I contacted Andrew and arranged a site visit at the lorry park with portfolio holder and Councillor Davey after being contacted by several of the camper van dwellers who are using the site. And I just want to make it really, really clear, because there's confusion within the town. I think there may be confusion within some councillors. They are not traditional travellers. They're very, very easy to distinguish from them. They pose absolutely no threat to the town and its residents, and they contribute to the local economy by working and using Exmouth businesses. They don't expect to stay there for free. They're willing to pay for their usage, but for the reasons that I'll outline in a minute, they cannot afford tourist rates. So they're part of a growing number of people, and it's been really interesting because it's highlighted this to me, something I wasn't really aware of. Part of a growing number of people for whom living in a house is either impossible financially, or it's a block to them ever getting on in life. So they live cheaply for a while, they save, and then they can afford to live properly and maybe buy a property. So to be frank, whatever cabinet or the council eventually decides to do with the site, and I do err in favour of the camper van option, but whatever the council decides to do, it's fine by me. But what we have to do, so if it chooses to remove the people from the site, ultimately, I think I just want to stress, I think we have a duty to find a suitable site for them at a rate that they can afford all year round. Because given crippling austerity and rising living costs and all the usual things that apply to everything that we've spoken about tonight, this problem is only going to get worse. So I politely request that as this process of thinking about what we want to do with the lorry park progresses, that a priority and a kind of concurrent thing is part of the process is given to finding a site for them before moving them on. Because we can all sadly sit here and sagely nod about how terrible it is. People can't afford to live in a house, and it's terrible. But we do need to sort it out for them, because we all sit in homes with comfort and convenience. And the alternative to them living in these camper vans is homelessness, effectively, or living curbside on the public highway, which doesn't suit anybody at all. And I think time spent sorting this quickly would prevent larger sums having to be spent on housing them when they present as homeless in the future. And they're reasonable people looking to just get a foot on the ladder in life. And I'd also like to suggest that Cabinet and other people take a look at Meanwhile sites in Bristol to sort of investigate how they do it. They're sites where people are, basically can live at a low rent, that enables them to get on with what they need to do. And I'd preferably produce a report on the subject as soon as is possible, because this is only going to get worse. This is only going to get worse, and potentially quite quickly, given the way that that everything is costing more, and housing, even renting a house is becoming almost impossible, and given the sort of pressure on actually finding a property here. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Whibley, very much. Seeing perhaps the direction of travel that the contributions are going to go in, one of the blessings of virtual meetings and Zoom, and we haven't done it much at all in the last civic year, is the ability to add in extra cabinet meetings. I know it's rather tiresome for some, but we haven't done it for a long time. I am mindful that at 9:20, perhaps not everybody's doing their best thinking. So just putting that out there, maybe we should bring this back in for a bit of a cabinet special with very few agenda items. It's a huge subject, isn't it? But the opportunity is there to get this right. So coming next, please, to, sorry about this, I can't see who's there. Councillor Desaran, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have every sympathy with what Councillor Whibley has just pointed out to us. I think it is a very distressing situation that people will find themselves homeless, and I'm particularly concerned about this. I would also like to offer my congratulations to Andrew and wishing him a pleasant retirement. and to say that I am the chair of the Exmouth Campertaff for my sins. So I'm happy for it to come back to the Town Council to be fully debated. I do have one concern, Chair, namely that a report from Worcester County Council talked about what happens when lorry sites are under pressure. In this case, they talk about urban development, but they put, in these cases, it is important to focus on providing effective replacement facilities. Alternate sites can often become isolated from food and other facilities. So the question that I'd ask you to look at from Cabinet, as I'm sure many speakers are going to talk about this, because I've also had discussions with our county councillors, and Andrew Ennis was also concerned about what was going to happen to the lorries, because obviously what we don't want, and that's not anything against what Councillor Wibley has said, but what Exmouth doesn't want is to be filled with a juggernaut of lorries everywhere, from Plum Park to Goodmoors, all over the shop. We don't want lorries everywhere. So there is a place, as Worcester have said, for the appropriate lorry park. So I do believe that what Councillor Wibley has said does make sense, but I wonder what site could we perhaps put these people to. If we're going to keep them on that site, then we will need some form of lorry park. And that's what I very much would like other members to debate tonight. And I'm sure we will hear that argument. As I said, I'm not against what Councillor Wibley said, because I absolutely get the need to look after the homelessness, but we do need to also protect our town against almost, one might say, an invasion of lorry drivers coming here, there and everywhere. So if I could ask Cabinet to consider that, I would be greatly appreciated. Thank you ever so much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor de Sarum. Councillor Fred Cahill, please, and also Councillor Cahill, thank you very much for the documents and email that you supplied to all members earlier. So I hope you can. I hope those have been read. I'm sure they have been read. So that gets you off to a head start. So over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay? Because unfortunately my video is not working tonight. No. So it's voice only, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Chair. Yes, I hope everybody took the opportunity to look at the information that I supplied earlier. Thank you to Susan Howell, because I couldn't attach the documents to the email, so she was very kind to forward those things on for me. I do empathise with anybody who has difficulties in living anywhere. So, you know, this is not me having a go at the people that are already parked on the lorry park. But as I said in my email, and I'm not going to go over it word for word, in terms of the working lorry driver or truck driver who has to follow the law and has to either overnight or take his appropriate breaks, or even arrive early into a town and not be able to park on somewhere like Deanon Way, even though they are in breach of the Kemp, and also arriving early. Basically, because we haven't got a lorry park where they can go and park and wait for that appropriate time when they can deliver their concrete pipes to the site. Now, that is something that came about because, as we know, the construction compound was created for the flood relief work, and the signs to the lorry park were taken down. Now the construction is gone. The lorry park was never reinstated. Now, I spent time with Councillor Channon, a county councillor, Bruce, a town councillor, Frank Cullis, and the town clerk, and we met with Andrew Ennis at Foxholes car park over a year ago. And there was a very useful suggestion put by Councillor Channon about turning half of that car park into a purpose-built motorhome park. Motorhome, not for camper vans, but for motorhomes. And the reason for that is because the echelon parking on the seafront is only suitable for camper vans or motorhomes of 5 meters or less, because that's the way the spaces are designed for those size of vehicles. Anything over is enforceable because it clearly says on the signs, but the signs have now changed, that you should be fitting into the space. And anybody who's not in that space are then encroaching on the pavement, and not everybody wants to walk on the other side of the road. Some people want to walk on the Mare side of the road. Unfortunately, they're out in the road because they're being pushed out in the road because vehicles are blocking the pavement, which is an unacceptable thing to happen. The idea that was posed by Christine Channon, County Councillor Christine Channon, was a good idea to provide full facilities at a market rate, and that would eradicate any of the motorhomes parking overnight, of which they are still doing at the Orcombe Point end of Queen's Drive. And once again, not being enforced. So as they creep back into that parking, overnight parking routine, it creeps. And then we have mission creep, and we have more and more and more and more. And before long, we fill up that area again with motorhomes. So the problem goes round in a circle. So the idea was posed to Andrew Ennis. We also looked at all the various other sites on that particular morning. We spent the whole morning going around all the various car parks and all the various sites. And Andrew wholly knows my feeling about utilising the lorry park for camper vans and motorhomes because of the things I've stipulated in the documentation that I've sent out. The lorry drivers have to abide by the law. Also, we put in conditions in our planning documentation in a Kemp, and that is also something that needs to be complied with, otherwise it's enforceable against the developer. So, you can have your cake and eat it. You either need to provide somewhere for the lorries, or you're going to enforce breaking the planning conditions against the developer. So the council really needs to look at this in the round and debate it carefully. But at the same time, it's not just about Exmouth Town Council, it's about the wider issue. And the camper van and motorhome TAF was established some years back. So this has been a long time in the making, and we still haven't got nowhere. And it was supposed to be Exmouth Town Council, East Devon District Council, and Devon County Council. All of a sudden, it's been crept into a car parking TAF at East Devon District Council, and now the car parking TAF is talking about camper van and motorhomes. So I'm not sure why we've got two TAFs talking about camper van and motorhomes when the one that was set up initially covers across 3 councils, yet the one that's run by East Devon District Council only covers 1 council. I've put all the information in the emails, as you rightly addressed, Chair, and I think the words from the Department of Transport are self-explanatory. So thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cahill. And it's a very substantial contribution, and that is firming up the impression in my mind that there's going to be a limited amount we can decide tonight. Can I just come to Councillor Jeff Young, please?
Thank you, Chair. Cut to the chase. I've just lost my place now. Going to the recommendations, if we can take it into 2 parts, that we as Cabinet should agree the arrangements for cash collection, which is urgent, and the Cabinet approved the policy to use EDC pay and display car parks for camper vans and motorhomes. That we need to agree that we need to do more work on. We need to look at these meanwhile sites. We need to look at the lorry park. Do we actually need one? There's arguments for and against, but where? Having it with a wonderful sea view, possibly not, next to an industrial site would be a lot more appropriate. Does it need to be in Exmouth, or could it be somewhere else in the district? There's a lot of questions on that. And where do we put the camper van site? It's fairly obvious that a view of the estuary is a pretty good site. But there's a fantastic amount of work that we need to go into that I don't think we can sort that out tonight. So we approve the cash collections tonight, and we agree to look at meanwhile sites, look at the lorry park, and look at the camper van sites. Thank you.
Now, from my perspective, that seems very helpful. Anybody with yellow hands currently up, do please keep them up. But if that's going to be problematic to any of you, can you just shout out? Because what I quite like to do is just get those first two off, and then we can discuss the last two.
Just the matter is that we need to agree the 30,000 for the car park teams.
Yeah.
That's the other thing we need to decide tonight.
Okay, so what we coming to.
Could I speak as one of the ward members, please?
Please do.
I was present at that meeting. I don't even know if I was invited. It might have been when I was in hospital last year. I don't know. But I think the whole question of that area needs to be examined, because that, I believe, was all part of King George V playing grounds, which was gifted to the town in 1935. It's not Imperial Recreation Ground, as is stated. These things get lost when names are changed. It's King George V Recreation Ground, and I believe that the lorry park is probably part of that. It was reclaimed from the sea. I've got written documentation here, which I pushed through Nick's door yesterday, Councillor Hookway's door. I'm sorry it wasn't too legible. Yeah, thanks, Nick. But that needs to be looked at before any decision is made. The other thing that needs to be looked at is that we used to look at sites for gypsies and travellers. Well, travellers has taken on a whole different meaning now. Travellers means people in mobile homes who are not part of the travelling community, but nonetheless want to find a car park to park their camper van or their mobile home. So that needs to be looked at. Travellers, gypsies and traveller sites have to be on a main spinal route. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it has to be on a main spinal route to enable education for the children of the gypsies or travellers. And these things have to be seriously taken into consideration. Now, one proposal, I remember this from many years ago. We used to get it at school transport appeals, where, children from those communities might have needed free school transport along main busy routes, almost motorways. And so it's a huge subject. It's not just about car parking charges. And let's not forget that Exmouth Rugby Club let out their rugby field for the summer months. I don't know what we're charging now. What are we charging a night? Anyone know for a camper van mobile home? But I know that the rugby club are on a nice little earner of £20 per vehicle per night. And the field is stacked full. So, I put that before you. I think there's a lot more work needs to be done on this. But certainly we need to protect our open spaces, which are King George V. And they are now, they used to be the National Playing Fields Association. They are now Fields in Trust.
Okay, can I if I stop you there, just so that we can, but thank you very much for all that information. So just to remind members, I think on the last page, page 130, there is a clear intention. What's been captured there by Andrew and John is the other matters that we need to be considering, and a report being brought forward for the autumn. So just having that there as the backstop. Obviously, what we need to try and do this evening is find a way ahead on the urgent business. Can I just come to Councillor John Loudon next, please?
Thank you, Chair. Right, as Jeff said, let's cut to the chase. And can I follow on from what Jeff was saying, and can I propose that we recommendate the first recommendation, that Cabinet approve the proposed arrangements for cash collection, etc. That first paragraph, I propose we support that. And the way I'm reading this is that in the third paragraph, it talks there about requiring 2 additional officers to support partly cash collection and partly camper van provision. I'm going to make an assumption that one of those would be sufficient to deal with cash collection. And I'm looking, and I think I'm seeing Simon nodding. So I would propose that we take the first paragraph and we then approve 1 additional officer in relation to the cash collection. That's the first thing. The second thing is, blimey, don't we know car parking and the toilets are the biggies, you know? And don't we know, if we don't get it right, it just keeps coming back. It's the thing that keeps giving. So my concern here is to make sure that we get the rest of it right. And we try and do so and see whether we can hit the summer season, if we can. So what I would propose, Chair, is if we take those points that I've just proposed and then deal with the rest of the report within the next 2 weeks at Cabinet, and whether that's a one-off event, what have you, but then, because there's stuff in there that people are going to need to think carefully about and to think locally as well as across the whole district about. So that would be my proposal, Chair. And I don't know, poor old Henry, probably his camera's off. He's probably not nodded off by now. No, sorry.
Look at him.
Fresh as
a daisy, yeah. Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, wilted days.
I don't know if you've got the gist of that.
Yes.
Henry.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I just need to clarify would be that the splitting of the third recommendation is, I don't think there's a budgetary request for the 1 post to deal with cash collection. I think the 30,000 would effectively relate to the 2nd post to cover the motorhomes and camper vans. So I think that's absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so members, can I just want to put to you, I would say that what Councillor Loudon has said there is very helpful, building on what Councillor Young has said and everybody else's contributions. What I would like to say now is that we will try and do a Cabinet meeting. It might have to be 3 weeks' time, I'm guessing. So when is annual council? That's the 19th. So I don't think we want to do it the day before annual council, do we? So probably the week after that. Is that, and I know there are a lot of people still waiting to speak, but do you forgive me, all of you, Marcus, Steve, Paul, Nick, Peter, and indeed Jack? Are you okay to hold your contributions until then? Yeah, thank you. I think that.
Second Councillor Loudon's proposal, if that helps.
Is that for you, Jack? Are you happy to do? Okay, so Councillor Rowland's doing that. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Chair.
Yes,
I'm
please.
happy to wait till the other meeting. There's just one point that might be pertinent, and that would be what role possibly could Overview have in this process in terms of the policy that's been developed for motorhomes?
Well, I fear at the moment it might just hold it up. That's the only thing, because we are trying. If what we're trying to do,
we want to get it right, don't we, Chair?
We do, but we want to get it right for this summer. And in a way, there's nothing quite like, you know, as a businessman will know, Marcus, nothing quite like a deadline, is there? Sometimes to get it get it right. It's a fair point.
Just putting it out there. There's not much on the forward plan. That's all I was thinking.
No, that's true. That is true.
Chair.
Yes, please.
I'm
Nick.
sorry. I've held my thoughts, but there are so many issues that need to be discussed. I would like to propose that we have a daytime cabinet meeting as soon as possible to go through all these things, because some of the things that some people have suggested will be very contentious with some residents, because I've had discussions with them about this, and I think we need to do this very quickly, please. I think we really do need to meet and make decisions about this. There are many, many issues going on here that we need to discuss. It is very important. I think for Exmouth members, this may well be the most important agenda item tonight.
Okay, that's heard. What Councillor Hartland and Councillor Hookwave just said has been heard. Henry, sorry to put you on the spot. I mean, realistically, a daytime cabinet, how soon can we have it? I mean, obviously, we've got annual coming up the week after next.
Well, I mean, I don't think, unless there's any expectation that the agenda papers are changed, I think it could be called relatively quickly, subject to any other meetings during the daytime. So, yeah, I mean, I think the week commencing the 23rd, I think you mentioned would probably be all right for a daytime meeting, or indeed an evening meeting. I think we just need to take it away. I mean, we can liaise with you to get a meeting as soon as possible. I think that would be the thing. I don't think there's any further reports. I think it's bring this back and debate it.
Yes,
further, basically.
And I think the spirit of what Nick is suggesting, and indeed Marcus as well. I mean, it's sort of it's a sort of cabinet overview, isn't it, kind of thing, and we do probably, I can quite imagine it being a bit like one of those strategic planning meetings that has a morning element and perhaps goes on after a break as well.
Good, well done.
I think I think you will establish through the discussion whether or not you want to ask overview to assist you. I think you'll get that steer as you have the debate at the next meeting.
Okay. So I see all. So yellow handers, are you happy to go?
Simon's put his hand up, Chair.
Oh, Simon, please, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point, if we are trying to organise it fairly quick, it might be useful before, this is selfishly, Andrew Ennis disappears out the door.
Yes. Andrew.
That would be useful, Chair.
I bet you're delighted about that. And Andrew, I can't see on my screen. I'm sure you're still there.
I'm still here. Yeah.
I can only see 12 people. So when dare I ask when you're off?
Yeah. I'm afraid my last working day was the 20th of May.
Okay, right. So you're not looking for consultancy work, no? So okay.
Well, Chair, let's take it up. I mean, if it's okay with you, we'll liaise with you afterwards and Andrew. But I mean, there's no reason why it can't be in the week of the 16th.
Okay. All right, that's good.
Can I just make a quick point, Paul?
Yes, please do.
Regarding making, if we did go for Camperdown for a camper van site, or not Camperdown, but where the lorry park is, it will take a long time there's a lot of engineering, design, and planning permission, change of use, etc. So we're not going to get anything done this summer.
This summer.
Yeah, so there is not that urgency.
Okay, all right, thank you. So can I this is just by way of courtesy, really. Yellow handers, can you bear to put your yellow hands down on the basis that I'll bring you in first when we next meet? Is that okay?
It's Mr. Ennis definitely going to be there, because part of my remarks were a tribute to him. So I hope he is anyway. Thank you.
Okay, we will endeavour to ensure that's the case. Thank you so much for everybody for that. I think that's for the best for this debate. It's been we haven't had one of these thumping long agendas for a while, so sorry about that, but I'm glad to see this back, and if we can set up a formula for a very good wide debate on this, That seems to be the best way forward. So we need to take a vote, don't we, on Councillor Young and Councillor Loudon's proposal. Okay, so can we go to a vote on that now, please? Green ticks, red crosses, etc. Oh dear.
That's unanimous in favour, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Amanda. Andrew, this was going to be goodbye. I was going to give you a golden carriage clock and all the rest of it, but I'm afraid it looks like we're going to have you again. So look forward to seeing you on that. And thank you. But it feels as if we're shaping towards a very helpful legacy where it's very clear what the issues are now, even as huge as they are. Anything else you'd like to come back in on? You're looking keen.
No, just to say thank you. And yes, I thought it was my last one, but yeah, we'll try in one more.
That's life. Maybe two more. I mean, we can keep squeezing them in. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. That brings our meeting to an end. I'd like to thank everyone for taking part. Please can I remember members that Democratic Services will confirm when the meeting's no longer going, but until then, comments will be recorded.